The main character named Jian Tian stands at the grave of his mother, who was in a deplorable state, covered with stains and threats. On the gravestone itself, there was only a photo attached. Jian Tian touched the stone to greet his mother. He held up the photo to get a better look. At that time, their father married another woman, kicking his ex-wife and children out of the house. Their mother had been on her knees all night in the downpour, begging them to leave at least the children in the house. But the cold metal door slammed in her face. At one point, the door opened again, and the woman began to hope that the father of their children once again returned to reason and love. But my father only let the angry wild dogs into his family while protecting the children. One of them bit a woman. He started attacking the mother as she painfully begged her children to run away before it was too late. They broke away from the wild animals and walked through the forest in the heavy rain until my mother could not accept her helplessness because she needed to protect them. After a while, Jian Tian was sure that they would now be able to live a normal life. But after what happened, his mother couldn't accept it and jumped off the building. Before that, she only called her son, begging him to take care of each other. This was their last conversation. Returning from school, the boy saw only the broken corpse of his mother and his sister crying with fear. One could imagine how hard it was for two children to survive in a society that despised them and didn't show them the slightest bit of empathy. The man raised the knife in his hands, intending to stab the children, but an unknown man saved them by killing the threatening man. After that, he took Jian Tian with him, separating them from his sister. 10 years later, China's borders were under heavy enemy attack. China had already lost several checkpoints and several thousand miles of defenses, and hundreds of soldiers were badly wounded, but no one could help them. And at that moment, an unknown hero arrived. He easily killed the commander-in-chief and tens of thousands of soldiers. This person turned out to be Jian Tian himself, who was a rising star in the US Army. By winning the war alone, he became a global star. The people began to praise him. It carried the power of earth, heaven, and thunder, which enemies would not be able to resist. Jian Tian's rage was off the scale, because just 10 years ago, he had lived like a stray dog. And when he returned, he became the king of heaven. While standing at his mother's grave, an unknown gang entered through the gate, verbally attacking Jian Tian because this territory is forbidden to step on. The inscriptions on the tombstone were Miss Shangguan Nalan's idea that this gang performed. Jian Tian recognized this name because it was his late mother's best friend. But their strong friendship was broken by a man. This man, Mr. Chen, was from a rich family, and he and his mother were in love despite having 2 children. His mother was as beautiful as a flower, but her heart was already dead. Because of this, Mr. Chen also courted Nalan, but later rejected her. In order to prevent their mother from entering a rich family, the Shangguan family forged documents to destroy their old home, the only thing they had. Trying to finally deal with the problem, Shangguan began to encroach on the lives of children, because of which the mother had to commit suicide. But even that didn't seem enough for her, and after the death of her rival, she sent hitmen to kill her children. Also, because of her resentment, she began to mock her grave, putting insulting inscriptions on it. She hired a bunch of bandits to guard her grave so that no one could come and honor her soul. Today, it was already 10 years since his mother had died, and it was on this date that Nalan decided to mock her mother's ashes. These actions proved her rotten soul, which made Jian Tian very angry. Jian Tian stood resolutely, defending the grave from the gang. The most important of them came closer, threatening to beat him if he didn't move away. Today was Mrs. Chen's birthday, and they were angry that he was resting and eating his fill while they had to do the dirty work. The second of the guys started yelling at Jian Tian, threatening him. After saying that, he spat on the grave, showing his indifference and disrespect. It made his friends laugh a lot. Their leader spread his legs, inviting Jian Tian to get into his pants, and just for that, he would probably let him go, mocking him. The other guy was annoyed by his look and started yelling at him. Angry, the guy decided to show his spit for the second time, sitting down at the grave. But a hand went to his collar, which made him afraid. Jian Tian took him by the collar, lifting him up with just one hand, making the bandit nervous. In one fell swoop, Jian Tian threw the bandit to the ground face first with all his strength. After that, he ordered the bandit to clean the grave with their mouths, smearing it on the grass. It turns out that this guy was very heavy in weight, and the guys immediately called Jian Tian a monster for lifting him up so easily. The guy started bleeding from his mouth and got up, asking for help from his frightened friends. Jian Tian only waved his hand, and his punch landed on the knee of the bandit on the ground. He was immediately seized by a terrible pain in his leg, which made him cry out. The guy repeated his order to the bandit again. While the bandit was dying of pain on the grass, Jian Tian turned to the rest of the crowd, hinting that he wouldn't repeat it again. Out of fear, he immediately began to lick the dirt off the tombstone. At this point, a helicopter arrives with a container attached from below. The guys don't understand why he's here. It was followed by a huge number of similar helicopters with different containers. Jian Tian gave the order to begin. The helicopter suddenly unhooked the cargo in mid-flight. The containers fell right next to the bandits. Uniformed men began to jump out of the same helicopters. They jumped down exactly in front of Jiang Tian and Rose. The bandit didn't understand what was going on here. All the soldiers who jumped out knelt down in front of Jiang Tian and greeted him, calling him His Majesty. He ordered us to begin. The soldiers immediately accepted his order. They began opening containers that were filled to the top with gold bars. It turned out that they were going to use all that gold to rebuild his mother's grave. The bandits, seeing such a large amount of gold, were very surprised. They had never seen so much gold on a grave, and they had no idea how much it was worth. Jiang Tian turned to his mother in heaven, reminding her that she once jokingly said that one day he would be able to build a grave for her out of gold and have a lot of money. An old, dirty stone grave lay at his feet when he was able to admit that he had done it. He promised himself that within a month, he would make the vile Shangguan lie at her grave begging for mercy. The bandits couldn't figure out who this guy was, calling him terrible. Jiang Tian heard this and looked at them. He immediately retracted his words, startled by his powerful gaze. They bowed in front of Jiang Tian, explaining that the Chen family had ordered surveillance of this place. He immediately realized that the bitch Shangguan Nalan had married Mr. Cheng after all. The entire Chen clan was now under her control. The bandit was delighted with his reaction, thinking that he was afraid of the Chen family since they had power over the entire city. They immediately began to believe that as long as they were under Mr. Chen's protection, they wouldn't be harmed, even by such a guy. He instantly stomped his foot, which caused an explosion as he taunted Mr. Chen's might. The explosion instantly went on and severed the head of the guy sitting next to their leader. Behind him, all of his friends took turns exploding. After seeing this, he immediately began to bow down to Jiang Tian, begging him not to kill, asking him to listen to his explanation. But Jiang Tian sneered that the king never listens to explanations. The bandit didn't understand how he dared to call himself the king. But then he immediately recognized him because he was the winged god of war. In a moment of realization, Jiang Tian blasted him as well. He started packing up his mother's old grave. He handed the packed stone to one of his servants. Today was Nalan's birthday, and it was an important day for Mr. Chen, so he was going to put on a little show and return the stone to that bitch. Events move on to Tiandu Hotel, which was one of the attractions of Haidong. An expensive car pulled up to the hotel. Jiang Tian stepped out of it, remembering that his mother's house used to stand on the site of this hotel. The guy holding the tombstone called Tank turned to His Highness, asking if Tian had to go there because one of his guys would be enough to deal with them. But he immediately refused. He wants to send his enemies to jail with his own hands. He took the tombstone from the tank and entered the hotel. As they passed along the corridor, everyone turned to look after him. All the girls started admiring his aura and are willing to do anything to go on a date with him. He walked over to the table and with a loud bang, he threw the tombstone on the table. Jiang Tian sat down at the same table, picking up a glass of red wine. All the girls around him admired his beauty and power. After a while, a crowd of security guards entered the hotel. Among them was Wang Sanyao, who was the head of security. He immediately approached Jiang Tian, informing him that according to the rules of this hotel, he needed to check in at the reception. The chief knew that when Mr. Chen arrived, he would need to provide a list of all the guests who had arrived for the engagement ceremony. This rule was strict after all. Even Madame Nalan approved of them, not understanding how this brat dared to barge into the hall. He immediately demanded an invitation from him in a gruff voice. He immediately noticed the item that was lying on the table and reached out, because it needs to be opened to check for prohibited items. But Jiang Tian, picking up his chopsticks, only said that this person didn't deserve to see this and should give up this matter to Nalan. After saying that, he grabbed the chief's wrist with these chopsticks. The security chief couldn't stand the young man's impudence for calling Madam by her first name. He ordered the sheet to be opened and shown. He tried to pull away from the wands, but he couldn't pull his hands away. The chief couldn't understand how he couldn't extend a fist stuck between two sticks. And then, Jiang Tian only abruptly let go, causing him to fall backwards. The guard slammed into a nearby table, knocking him over. All the dishes started falling on him, including the bottle of wine that spilled on his head. After that, Jiang Tian threw away his chopsticks. Two men watched from an upper-floor balcony. It was Chen Hiting, who was the second son of the Chen family, and behind him was Mogan himself, the head of the family. Hiting asked who this guy was, but Mogan scoffed that he could only swat him down with a flick of his hand. Hiting laughed that over the years, many guys have come to avenge the deaths of their mothers. But now they are all lying in the middle of the sea. The head of security was raised by his wards, who he ordered to get rid of the guy. The crowd of security guards began to move in on Jiang Tian. At this moment, a long-legged girl named Zhuan Wei, who was the manager of the hotel, entered the conflict. The boss immediately greeted her happily. She approached Jiang Tian, introducing herself as a public relations manager. But to him, she was just Wei, and offered him a drink with her. She knew she should deal with this situation before the engagement party started. Placing her hand on his shoulder, she politely asked him to take a look at what he had brought with him, trying to find out what he wanted to pass on to Madame Nayland and Mr. Chen. But he pushed it away with a flick of his hand, getting rid of her hypocrisy, immediately asking for Miss Nayland to be called here. We immediately became angry at his behavior, and how dare he treat her like this. The co-owner of the hotel, Zhao Mao, entered the conversation, saying that he was surprised by the guy's audacity to communicate cruelly only with a girl, surrounded by so many men. He couldn't understand what the bastard was doing at his hotel. The co-owner immediately hit the security guard because of their inactivity. They pleaded guilty. Zhao Mao ran over to Wei, asking if she was okay. Wei tearfully explained that this guy had offended her very much. The co-owner immediately ordered Jian Tian to kneel in front of Wei and apologize, because how dare he insult her and raise his hand to her. Jian Tian only looked around, remembering that this was his home with his sister and mother, and how long they had lived here. The memory of him and his sister playing catch-up in the yard while his mother called them out for lunch came back to him. These thoughts immediately dampened his mood. The co-owner was very angry that the guy was standing silently and ignoring his order. He immediately turned to the security chief with a huge smile, ordering him to finish off this impudent man. When they heard this, the whole crowd gathered to attack him. People around them reacted to what was happening in different ways. Someone was worried and someone was happy about the upcoming fight. But Jian Tian only sat quietly and slowly sipped the red wine. The boss was holding an iron club in his hand, which he was going to use to strike the first blow at the impudent guy, whose calm appearance annoyed him greatly. He liked to choose a baton instead of a gun for such cases, which guarantees maximum pain and broken bones. The co-owner began to lead the girl away from the upcoming cruel spectacle, which is not intended for her fragile eyes. From the subsequent blow, he immediately dodged it. Then, he pulled the tombstone in his hands. Jian Tian slammed it into the ground, crushing it into the floor. A huge shockwave passed through it, which swept through all the people around. All the guards started to fall and lose consciousness, and some of them were choking on blood. Furniture and chandeliers began to fall. Jian Tian turned his attention to the girls who were watching the entire scene. They only blushed and were surprised at what he had just done. Second Chen, who was watching from the balcony, turned to Mogan, realizing that something was wrong with this guy. He asked Mogan for his opinion. He immediately confirmed that he had great potential while being surprised. Second Chen sat down on the bench, intending to watch him further, wondering about the item in his hands. The people around them were gaping after the incident as the co-owner kept trying to get Wei out of this place. But something made him turn abruptly. All the guards fell to their knees in front of the impudent guy. Jian Tian sat down at the table again and took the glass of wine in his hand, ordering the co-owner to come over. Zhao Mao immediately stated that today was a very important day, and this hotel belonged to the Chen family. Lady Nayland will also come, only a little later, and because of what he has arranged here, she can listen to his request. The co-owner advised not to behave arrogantly with her, despite the fact that he is a good fighter, because no one can resist her power, and all murders are considered an accident. Jian Tian just chuckled. The co-owner decided to leave it, since he does not want to register or leave. He ordered Jian Tian to wait here until Lady Nayland came. In fact, he was trying to engage him in conversation, trying to wait for Mr. Chen, which would grind the impudent man to dust. At that moment, Jian Tian tossed the tombstone with a flick of his hand. It landed right in front of Zhao Mao, causing him to be startled. Startled, the co-owner almost fell over, holding onto a nearby table as Wei tried to calm him down. Jian Tian knew that the co-owner had bad intentions towards him, so he would have to die. Hearing these words, Zhao Mao panicked. He decided to drop to his knees and bow down in front of the guy. Even so, he tried to warn him that he had already done some damage to the Chen family's property, and if he killed him, he would face a painful death for killing the co-owner. Jian Tian didn't react to his words, pressing his head to the ground with his foot. Zhao Mao called out for help from this. Finally, Mr. Chen started coming down the stairs, which he ordered to stop. Next to him were his bodyguards, and behind him, Mogan himself. We immediately ran to the master, explaining the whole terrible situation that she was trying so hard to solve. As soon as she ran over, she explained that the brat was now beating up Mr. Zhao for nothing. Zhao Mao, after learning that the master now knew everything, turned to Jian Tian with a smirk, forcing him to apologize. But the man only immediately kicked him with all his strength. Zhao Mao's headless body lay on the floor. Jian Tian walked past the body without emotion. He turned to Mr. Chen, asking him what he wanted to say to him. Mr. Chen was already shaking when he saw what had happened. He almost fell, but Mogan caught him. The master immediately forgot what he wanted to say. The people around them started to discuss who this unknown guy was, which was able to frighten the most domineering person in this city. Mogan sat the master down, taking charge. The old man admitted that the guy was really good and would be able to withstand even 10 of his powerful punches at full strength. The people around were surprised at this guy's strength. since he could withstand so many blows from Mogan. He decided to offer him a deal that if he could really handle them, he would let him go. The guys around him agreed that this was a very merciful offer from a cruel old man, and that he should fall on his knees before him. Juntian only now realized that this old man was Mogan, the one who sent those people to the cemetery. He reminded him that he had made the boys throw paint on someone else's grave. Mogan was immediately taken aback by the guy's words. The old man ordered one of the guards to call and find out how things were going in the cemetery. Mogan realized that the man might be related to someone who was buried there and began to assume that he was under the sheet. Jantian calmly said that he didn't need to worry and just take the bodies of those he had already killed. Mogan was surprised by the guy's strength and ordered him to confess who he really is. But all he said was that the old man had no right to ask. At these words, Mogan became really angry and apologized for future excessive cruelty. Jantian called Mogan a pathetic dog for wanting to die. By giving him a chance, if the old man could even touch him, then he would win. After such a challenge, the old man immediately pounced, intending to finish off this impudent man. The guards around him started supporting him to deal with this guy. A fireball started to form in Mogan's hand, and he was about to use it on Gentian, who was standing in front of him, not reacting to his upcoming attack. Gentian raised his hand, starting to pull the gravestone towards him. The tombstone flew up. He immediately sent it flying towards the old man with great speed as Mogan threw a fireball. The old man realized that this was not the best moment. The attack smashed into the tombstone, blowing the old man up, knocking him back. The old man landed with the last of his strength, but the fire caught up with him, hitting him in the chest, which made Mogan choke on blood. From this turn, the old man asked who he was. Not understanding where this monster came from in Haidong, Gentian asked with a smile if someone could pour him some pomegranate juice after the fight. He still can't forget the pomegranate tree that grew in their yard when they were kids. While he and his sister tried to get the most delicious and sweet fruits, my mother washed clothes nearby. The old man was very angry that, instead of answering the question, he just asked for pomegranate juice. He spoke out while the guard helped him to steady himself. Mogan decided to sum up that he doesn't care who this guy is, but in any case, he advises him not to encroach on the place of ownership of the Chen family, because the head of the Chen family is Chen Badao. This is the most important person in the city, and you should not cross his path. Chen Badao was the same person who took care of his late mother, and eventually married Nalan, and became the most respected person in this county. As a child, he was sure that Chen Badao was head over heels in love with his mother, but that was until he overheard Badao and Nalan talking. In Gentian's memories, Chen Badao can be seen rejecting his mother, calling her a worthless whore who didn't take the opportunity when he proposed, and standing next to her was a proud Nalan. The blame for the death of his mother lies on Badao's shoulders because he directly contributed to it. The old man ordered Tian to kneel down in front of Mr. Chen, because he could still spare him. Mogan is disappointed in himself for using his boss's status to threaten an enemy that is stronger than him. Jantian was angry this time because no one had brought him the pomegranate juice. Because of the old man's words, he decided to kill him right away. He attacked Mogan, which knocked him back several meters. Mogan flew away and landed on the wall. From such a powerful blow, the old man lost consciousness. Everyone was watching. Wei couldn't believe that the strongest elder was so easily killed. Jantian turned to another Mr. Cheng, trying to find out if they had any pomegranate juice. Chen immediately started apologizing and asking for time to arrange the best pomegranate juice. Jantian was pleased with his words, and he warned that he didn't like waiting at all. At this time, on the 5th floor of the inn, the Wen family and the Chen family were discussing the upcoming engagement of the two children, Wen Sui and Chen's nephew. It had to be the most beautiful and worthy couple. Shangguan Nalan's sister, Shangguan Susu, apologized that her sister and her husband, Chen Badao, would not be attending the event because they had flown to another country for business matters. She offered to be in charge of the wedding banquet with Mr. Wen's permission. The head of the Wen family, Wen Qingshan, naturally did not refuse the offer, because the girl was one of the most important people in Haidong. He then turned to his daughter, Xiao Shui, reminding her to meet her future consort, Chen Er, when they went downstairs. In fact, this engagement was to pull the Wen family out of a sorry state. Since the head of the family crossed the path of powerful people, only the Chen family had the right power. He was very upset that his daughter would have to marry a man not out of love, but because of his stupidity. Zood only agreed with her father, but her face showed her sadness. She could run away to find true love, but she is ready to sacrifice herself to save her father and family, because he already gave her a life like in a dream. But she still wanted to meet some stranger whom she wanted to repay. At this moment, the door of the room is opened by a frightened security guard who informs about an unknown person who killed Zhao Maoki, injured Mogan, and threatens Mr. Chen. Miss Shangguan slapped the table in rage, not understanding what right he had to cause a mess in a great family's home, much less such an important house. Shangguan Susu was about to go down and deal with the scoundrel, But the head of the Wen family stopped her, telling her not to waste time on a second-rate pawn. He offered to write him a letter to make him afraid. Mr. Wen was handed a letter paper. Picking up a brush, he began to ink out the words. Mr. Wen's servant was very proud of this action, because he decides everything without unnecessary interference with just one letter. Picking up the paper, he prepared to take it downstairs to hand over to the scoundrel, still continuing his speech about Mr. Wen's influence. Winsak told her father that she also wanted to go down. She got up and left the room, preparing to go down to the first floor where strange events are taking place. Yu started to walk down the stairs and everyone noticed her immediately. Guys would kill to be with someone as beautiful as her. But she only wondered who the person who had caused the disturbance here was. As she descended, she noticed the silhouette of Gentian sitting on a chair. Suddenly, she recognized him as someone else. It turned out that 3 years ago, she and her father went abroad to discuss business with foreign companies, but the same partner decided to attack them. When she and her father were able to get out of the car, he ordered her to run while he started fighting the goons. But 2 cars caught up with her, and she thought they were going to kill her. When she finally despaired, an unknown person fell from the sky, which was able to stop 2 cars with only 2 hands. He had saved not only her, but also her father, for which she was deeply grateful. Even though they only met once, he left an impression in her heart. She ran, realizing that no powerful and rich man could replace her hero, which was imprinted on her soul. Mr. Chen's security guard noticed that Zhui had come down here to meet him. He immediately started to get up so as not to embarrass himself. Mr. Chen looked at the fleeing Shui with a smile, thinking that all his gifts and attention had finally played their part, and this was the first time that she was taking the initiative on her own. He almost flew up with happiness, just as he was about to reassure her that he was fine. But she ran past Mr. Chen, unexpectedly hugging Gentian, exulting that she missed him so much. He definitely didn't expect this. All the guests began to jump to the conclusion that Shui wasn't even married yet and was cheating on her master. Chener could only watch in chagrin. Jantian also recognized her as his childhood best friend. As a child, he and his sister had no friends at all, except for Wenyu Shui. She protected them in all situations. And 3 years ago, he was just passing by, not expecting to meet an old friend, and naturally saved her. Wenju protected her sister and Gentian from evil children, which he remembered very much and never forgot her kindness. She reminded her of saving her life and her father's thanks to him, and decided to introduce herself, asking for the name in return. He introduced himself as Zhang Fei, which was one of his many aliases. As a child, his name was Zhan Wuqian. But then, this name seemed too gentle to him, and he changed it to Tian. He was surprised by the coincidence that she had a friend named Zhang, but she was upset because she hadn't seen him in years. Jantian immediately joked that it was a sign from fate. On the 5th floor, they decided to continue discussing the wedding, since everything was settled from below. Everyone started praising Mr. Wen's calligraphy, which probably caused the scoundrel to shit his pants and run away. The man jokes that a couple of hieroglyphs that scared the bandit will go down in the history of the family and will be told for thousands of years. Shangguan decided to joke that if she married Mr. Wen, then she would become a stepmother for her own nephew. At this time, the Wen and Chen family members were discussing the engagement of the 2 children of both families, realizing how much it would bring prosperity to both families. But the discussion was interrupted again by bursting into the room, reporting the same bandit. Mr. Wen thought that the bandit liked his attention so much that he wanted to keep his letter. But the guy is trying to explain that Ms. Wen and that guy are doing something publicly? Mr. Wen didn't understand, thinking that he was referring to Chener and Shui. He just smiled, because they were going to be husband and wife soon. Shangguan added that she hopes that Shui will have time to get pregnant, then their families will finally become related. The attendant grabbed Mr. Wen's arm, asking him to come with him. They left the office and headed for the 1st floor. Mr. Wen looked at the scene from the balcony, seeing Shui clinging to a stranger and Chener kneeling to the side. He shouted, not understanding what was going on here. Shangguan came up behind him, smiling, not knowing why he was surprised. At this moment, she was thinking how this wedding could expand her family's influence. She came closer. They saw Zhu chatting with some guy and they were standing very close. Shangguan was immediately shocked by what she saw. She immediately began to complain to Mr. Wen, because just as his daughter dared to publicly hug another guy, so did her fiancé, accusing him of bad parenting. He claimed he didn't know the guy. Shangguan thought that he sent the letter to avoid conflict, and now instead of solving the problem, he decided to just stand there. Shangguan Yi summed up that he needed to give her an explanation for this situation, since this act might embarrass the Chen family. Mr. Wen stopped her screams, trying to calmly understand everything, because his daughter was not at all like to hug strangers. They began to descend to get answers. When Father Zhui came down, he asked her in a loud voice for what was going on. She looked away from the boy, surprised at her father's presence. Su decided to pull away. She immediately ran up to her father, telling him that this impudent guy was the savior he wanted to thank so much. Mr. Wen recognized him immediately. He admitted that he did not sleep for several nights after that, because he could not say thank you. But he was also surprised that they were communicating as if they knew each other very well. She immediately replied that she had already asked about him, and his name was Zhan Fei, which was very similar to the Zhan Tian she was friends with as a child. Zhan Tian immediately described his action as a gesture of goodwill and did not ask for thanks. He also remembered that as a child, Wen Shui often took them as her sister to her home, where her mother, Wen Liming, was a very kind and caring woman. Every time they came, she set a huge table, and her father made the children laugh with his stories. Chen Er ran over to Shang Huanshu, demanding to deal with the guy. After all, he demands to see his mother, and even Mogan himself couldn't turn him away. She only calmed him down, intending to sort out the situation. Shang Guan turned to Mr. Wen, demanding an explanation for what was happening, and why his ill-mannered daughter climbs on the neck of everyone she meets, even though it is obvious that she is an ordinary simpleton. Mr. Wen did not ignore the insults directed at his daughter and demanded an account of his words from Shang Guan. This claim instantly angered Shang Guan, rejoicing that the wedding was not a success. She is going to annul the marriage and demands to return all the gifts from the Chen family. And she also demanded that the couple kneel in front of her nephew and beg for forgiveness, or none of them will leave here in one piece. Yus hadn't expected such harsh words, but Zhan Tian closed it behind him. He was surprised because he also wanted to demand that the marriage be annulled. Shang Guan was surprised by the stranger's audacity. She shouted and called for Mr. Feng. A middle-aged man started down the stairs. As he approached, he reported his arrival to the lady. Stewart explained that the man's name was Shi Feng, who was Mr. Chen's own chain dog. He became famous for his cruelty. He committed numerous murders and was given the nickname Killer. Chener immediately ordered Feng to deal cruelly with this brat so that he would feel the full wrath of the Chen family. He was furious that some kid had taken his fiancée away from him and shamed him in the public eye. At this time, Mogan stood up with the help of his guards. He claimed that Si Feng's attacks only left destruction, so even this kid wouldn't be able to resist them. He couldn't wait to be killed. Si Feng walked up to Zhan Tian. He said he'd give me 3 seconds to think before I took his head off. Shang Guan was adding fuel to the fire by denouncing the impudent man. Shi Feng also held a high position in the Chen family, and can even speak for the master. Chen Er also joined in, commanding Feng to finally deal with him without worrying about the consequences. He shifted his anger to Zhui, who he accused of seducing men in public. Zhui hid behind Zhan Tian's shoulder, admitting that she didn't like him at all and asking him to break off the engagement. He was angry at the order, as if she'd forgotten his last name. Zhan Tian suddenly extended a hand towards his face. He started slapping him on the cheek, asking him again about his pomegranate juice. Chen Er slapped his hand away, not understanding how he could talk about juice at a time like this. Ordering Feng to deal with him, Fen turned to the stranger, not understanding why he wanted to say goodbye to life. But Zhan Tian started to get angry because the pomegranate juice was never brought to him, and energy started to form around him. Chen Er immediately entered the area of impact, feeling a powerful, murderous spirit. The whirlwind tossed him up. He flew off, falling to the floor, asking Shi Fen for help. Shi Fen ran forward, intending to attack. The floor cracked under his feet. The guards and Elder Mogan supported him, hoping that he would be able to kill him. Shang Guan also sat there, watching the scene, enjoying the end of it. Chen Er was sure that after finishing, he would torture this guy for a long time and painfully make him realize who he was messing with. Everyone knew that Si Fen was a martial artist that served Chen Badao himself. He was on a completely different level than an elder. Mr. Wen and Mr. Zhui were very worried. Si Fen approached, preparing to strike. But as he approached, Si Fen noticed something interesting on Zhan Tian's waist. He noticed that he was wearing the badge of a winged cavalry military general. There was a time when, during the Battle of Dragon Valley, 1,000 winged cavalrymen smashed down the enemy, then regained the lost lands. Only generals are allowed to wear such tokens. When the military team was recruiting people, Shi Fen also started participating, hoping to get a high position but lost in the first round. He knew that tokens were divided into certain ranks, going in ascending order. The token from the Red Bird of the South was the highest. Such a black belt that the guy was wearing, you could easily buy on the internet. He launched an attack, taunting the youngsters for trying to keep up with the fashion. But Zhan Tian was already gone. Turning around, he saw him standing in front of a terrified Chen Er. Zhan Tian asked about the juice again. Si Fen turned around, preparing to launch another attack at the smug boar. He's about to attack, but suddenly, the token of the Red Bird of the South appeared on his belt. Zhan Tian blocked the attack by covering himself with a huge blue dome. Ji Fen couldn't believe that only high-level practitioners had such a protective aura. But at that moment, he noticed the same token. He was immediately afraid after all. Only Emperor Zhan had the right to wear this token. At the same time, he fell to his knees. He began to bow down under Zhang Tian's feet. Shangguan couldn't understand what was happening to him. Chen Er ordered someone to call a doctor. We reminded her master that there was a first aid kit in the kitchen. At that moment, the paramedics who were ready to give Shifeng first aid came running. Chen Er informed them that the master looked like he was having a seizure and needed to be hospitalized immediately. He started ordering the guard to help the master walk to the car. Shangguan was proud of her nephew for being able to solve such urgent problems on the spot. The guard ran to Master Shifeng, who was still sitting on his lap as ordered. But when the master raised his head, there was an animal rage in his eyes. He immediately knocked the guard away, sending him flying into the crowd. Chen Er couldn't figure out what was wrong with Master, so he walked over to him. Sifen slapped Chen's face very hard, throwing it back. He couldn't understand what Chen Er expected from it. Zhifei knew that Chen Badao had acted wisely when he contacted the Shangguan family, and then had 2 beautiful children. But he didn't know if these 2 would be enough. Shangguan Susu immediately intervened, not understanding what Master was doing. He'd insulted her, and if she wanted to die, she couldn't take him with her. Zhifei knew that they were completely blind, not understanding what they were trying to do now. Shangguan was furious at the master's words, and he cursed her like she was a servant and she wasn't going to turn a blind eye to it. But before she can finish, the master slaps her across the face. She fell to the floor, plates and bottles falling on her. Shangguan stood up, ordering the guards to deal with this old man. But Master Shifei struck again. He continued to beat her, realizing their mistake. Shifei understood that compared to the emperor, these families were insignificant and at most, it would be one of the king's advisors. He hoped that by atoning for his previous crimes, the emperor would leave him his old life. Shangguan was ready to feed the old man to her dogs when her son-in-law returned. A furious explosive run was heard from behind. It was a tank, Zhang Tian's security guard, running away. He ran to the uncomprehending Shangguan and grabbed her leg. With only one hand, he picked it up, turning it upside down. Because anyone who does not respect the emperor must die. After that, he threw it to the ground with all his might, causing the entire area to shake. But that wasn't enough for him, lifting her up again. From the look of her, her soul had long since left her body. Once again, he slams her to the ground with all his anger. Once he was clear, he stared at her while the people around him sighed at what they saw. She was lying in the broken floor, bleeding profusely, begging for mercy. But then, the tank swung its huge hammer and delivered the final blow to Shangguan, ripping everything apart. After sorting it out, he was about to report back to his master. He turned to Zhang Tian, telling him that there were his brothers all around the perimeter who could sort out this garbage for him. He only ordered that bad habits get in the way, so he should behave more restrained. Tank told the people that he was counting to 1, and anyone who dared to stay on their feet would have to face his hammer in person. Everyone started to fall to their knees. Shifei knew that one such encounter with the hammer and his life was over. Mogan marveled at the man's strength for addressing Chap with such respect. All the people in the hall started to fall to their knees. Chen Er, on his knees, began to beg for his life out of fear, admitting his mistake. Zhang Tian patted his cheek, reminding him of his earlier request. Chen Er immediately followed his order. He ordered his servants to bring a pomegranate, and then after thinking about it, he requested a whole pomegranate tree. A minute later, Chen Er knelt in front of Zhang Tian, holding out a pot of pomegranate tree. He took it, thanking her for the beautiful tree that he would hold up as a gift to his sister. Chen Er nervously reminded him that his parents were still abroad and suggested that he visit them in a couple of days. Zhang Tian knew about this and decided to ask Chen Er to give his mother one thing and a message that he would return in a month. He threw the tombstone at Chen Er, finishing the sentence that he would return to kill everyone. It hit the guy with an explosion. The dust from the impact dispersed, and Chen Heiting was able to see clearly. The incoming object crushed his legs. With the pomegranate tree in his hands, Zhang Tian started to leave. Shangguan, who was dying, assured him that when her son-in-law returned, she would grind him to dust. Zhang Tian was disappointed that even before she died, she didn't see the heavenly king. After saying that, he crushed her face with his foot, taking her life. Tank and Zhang Tian headed for the exit. They ride in the car, Tank at the wheel, asking if they are now heading for Mrs. Ashwan. Zhang Tian was able to learn everything he could about his sister, and her real name was Zhan Ashwang, and he was incredibly happy to see them again. But they weren't exactly following her now. The case is being moved to Haidong High School. It was the best school in Haidong, where only the best students study. And they also have a rating system to keep students competitive. And surprisingly, Zhan Ashwang was ranked first there. Now her name is Long Yideng, because her aunt couldn't protect her from Shangguan Yichen, so she was sent to an orphanage to be raised. When he left, his sister was a very small, sincere girl who loved to admire the beauty of nature, and he hoped that she still remained the same. The car stopped at the school gate. A group of bandits passed by. 2 guys approached their older brother, saying that one of the girls looked like a lake spirit because of her white skin, and her voice was as beautiful as birdsong. Also, she is the flower of the school, and maybe their boss will get lucky today. But Big Brother knew that this girl wasn't even looking in their boss's direction, and their job was only to get her to him. The guys started making excuses that they didn't want to piss him off at all. The older brother repeated the plan to his teammates to wait for her to leave school and then follow her to a quiet place. They've already studied her route, so there shouldn't be any problems. The older brother hit one of the guys because Pu Xiao, their boss, promised to write off the debt for this and also throw money, so he is ready for anything. The guy fell from the impact to the ground. The older brother said that everything will not be so simple, and this is a very important task, because the boss is head over heels in love with this girl. And even so, after that, they might even get lucky with Pu Xiao. He ordered the driver to be told not to interfere. A guy named Cao went to investigate. He knocked on the window of the car, ordering to remove his car because it interferes with his brothers. Zhentian calmly ordered a cup of tea to be brought to him, and then he would let him survive. This group of bastards are rioting in broad daylight, and fate has brought them to a meeting of the Emperor that cannot be ignored. Cao was surprised at the stranger's boldness for saying such a thing. Big Brother personally approached the conflict, deciding to look at the bastard who dared to ignore his request. He immediately informed his older brother that the man had asked him to pour tea. The older brother laughed out loud. Then, with a smile, he offered to pour the stranger some tea. The older brother said that he would make sure that the tea was fresh and hot, turning around and taking off his pants, doing his business in the glass. Back at the car, the group started laughing at their leader's generosity. Students began to appear around the school, and classes were just about to end. After studying the information, Zhentian found out that his sister lived approximately to the south of the city, in the Old Quarter. The old alley in the south of the city was his aunt's residence until it was demolished 2 years ago, and now it is not known where it is now. The older brother was angered by being ignored, demanding to be thanked for the tea. The guy saw the right silhouette in the crowd and called out to the older one. Classes were over and everyone was heading home. The crowd of students had their goal in mind. It wasn't the right time, because he wanted to deal with the guy in the car. He splashed the contents of the glass on the passenger window of the car. At that moment, Ashwan came out of the school with her friends, one of them thanking her for helping her with her homework. They discussed their lessons and their difficulties. The girls noticed that there was a group of guys on the road who had been following her for a couple of days and advised her to be careful. A group of stalkers was standing right in front of them. Friends advised Ashwan to call the teacher and tell him, because they can be dangerous. Passing girls were surprised that these guys had come to their Miss Number 1 again. One of them considered it unfair that only she gets all the male attention. As a group, they started making fun of Miss Know-It-All and why they were only chasing her. The older man approached Ashwan, offering to take a walk with him today. The smaller boys ran up to protect the girl because this is the school's territory and they can't come here and bully everyone in broad daylight. The older one grabbed one of the boys, wondering how a group of little suckers could tell him the rules. He punched him in the face. Ashwan screamed at them to go away and leave her alone. But he wasn't going to back down, and he held out his dirty hands to the girl, assuring her that he wouldn't hurt her. He almost grabbed it. At this moment, the sound of a motorcycle could be heard. A woman on a bike appeared between them. She ordered Ashwan to sit behind her, and the girl recognized the woman as Master Xia. The two of them got on a motorcycle and drove away from the scary guys. Chao didn't understand why Big Brother didn't chase after them, since this woman had taken their target away. He gave him a hat for that. Like he can chase them when they're riding a motorcycle and he only has one pair of legs. The older man knew how hard it was without transport these days, but he already had an idea of how to catch up with them. He knew that the girl's father owned an old market stall in the Old Quarter, so they probably went there. Moreover, this is a street food kiosk, and they will be able to eat for free. His friends admired their older brother. Zhentian was watching from the back of the car. When they arrived there, they would only be able to face their own death. Ashwan rides a motorcycle with his aunt. They finally reached her father's kiosk. Ashwang's foster father, Long Dukyang, was just working. My daughter said that she had returned from school. He was annoyed that she was back so early, and she could have gone out with her friends, because he could handle it. Her father noticed Master Xia, inviting her to sit down and taste the mutton he had just made. Unfortunately, she had to refuse, because she already had to leave. He was insistent, asking her to stay for a while as it was a special day. Ashwan whispered to the master that she should not tell her father about the incident at school, excluding unnecessary worries. They sat down at the table and father brought out a cake, wishing Long Yidang a happy birthday. Master Xia didn't know that it was her birthday today, so she congratulated her. Her father apologized that he didn't have enough money for a large and beautiful cake, and promised that he would earn it and buy her a nice present. Eden's eyes filled with tears as she asked him not to spend money on unnecessary things, even if she didn't need a cake. Just eating mutton would make her happy. Master Xia asked Iden to make a wish while Iden was wiping away her tears. She clasped her hands and smiled as she began making wishes. First, she wished her parents good health, and second, she wished that her mother from heaven would be proud of her, having found her peace. On the third, she wished to finally meet her brother. She hoped that after 10 years, he would dress warmly, take an umbrella in the rain, and never get sick. At that moment, a car pulled up to them. The same gang of bandits came out of it, laughing at the birthday party. With one hand, he crumpled the cake. Taking a piece in his hand, Big Brother took a bite and immediately spat it out because it tasted terrible. Big Brother flipped the table over in rage that the old man couldn't even buy a proper cake. Master C stood in front of them, protecting her student Aiden. The older brother only mocked her, hinting that he liked her very much, even if she was a little older. Xia immediately slapped him in the face, telling him to shut up. This only made him more interested, and he began to joke with her with a smile. The elder ordered his friends to drag her to the car. The father came to their defense, offering to solve the problem peacefully without conflict, inviting them all to drink and eat roast mutton, and then talk quietly. But he wasn't interested in listening to him, telling him to shut up if he didn't want to receive. They wouldn't be able to escape anyway, so the elder sat down on the bench, forcing them to bring him food and alcohol. He started eating meat as they watched. Ashwan apologized to her father that she was the reason they were here, but her father only assured her that as long as she was with him, no one would touch her. My father said that he had already called Daiki's brother and everything would be fine. He left it all to fate, because when he was rich, they didn't dare talk to him like that. 10 minutes passed, and my father was still roasting meat on the grill. A large man came up behind him. His father handed him the money, asking Daiki's brother to deal with it. He accepted the money and was ready to deal with it, but he hadn't eaten anything in the morning, so he told him to prepare some food for him. My father agreed and went to cook. The gangsters were sitting around drinking and having fun, but after a couple of minutes they got tired of it, and they were ready to get down to business. All the same, this territory belongs to them. There is no need to pay for anything. The eldest offered his father a reduction in payment for this month, but he would have to give them his daughter for the night. After threatening him with a knife, he promised that their boss Pu Xiao would take good care of her, and if he didn't want to get hurt, it was better to hand her over quickly. My father paused. He decided to calmly explain that it must be a joke, because his daughter is only in the first grade of high school and still a child. But the older man didn't listen and immediately slapped him across the face. He couldn't believe that the man still dared to answer and contradict him. He was advised to give up because Pu Xiao has everything and he has nothing. My father started shaking with anger. He sharply shouted that he didn't care about their status and anyone who touched his daughter would suffer at his hands. It was explained to him that this is not the best time to show his face and defend himself because he does not understand the consequences. Two guys grabbed both of his hands. He was lowered to his knees and his hands were wrapped behind his back so that he could not resist. The older man spat in his face. He explained that Pu Xiao had fallen in love with his daughter and could give her a normal life, not a worthless old man like him. And now, because of his resistance, he won't be able to do business here anymore. The guys began to surround the girls, offering to go with them. My father began to struggle. He was able to break free and hit one of the guys holding him. Both fell to the ground. Suddenly, my father picked up a folding chair. With this chair, he hit the elder's face with all his might. He started to bleed and left a mark on his cheek. The elder kicked the old man, showing him his place. He was beaten and kicked by the crowd. Ashwan came to her father's defense, asking the boys not to touch him. The people around them were watching and wanted to do something to help, but they couldn't, because this was their territory and no one wanted to mess with them. But suddenly, they saw a guy. Zhentian was driving the car. He directly drove into the car of Lao Hu, the gang's senior. After a mini-crash, he got out of the car. Zhentian started to approach the scene of the conflict. He denounced the boys for mobbing an old man and attacking a little girl. All the girls around him started to wonder at his beauty. Ashwan looked at the boy and began to recognize him. He came closer and greeted her, calling her little sister. She held out her hand. Ashwan couldn't believe it was her brother. Zhentian opened his arms for a hug, assuring her that it was him. She pinched her arm in disbelief. Tears welled up in her eyes, and now, she finally believed that her little brother was back. She ran into his arms, glad that he was really here with her. Weeping, she told him that only today she had made up her mind to meet him again, and now he had come here. She decided to ask if he would leave her again. He promised that he would not leave her alone again and would not let anyone bully her. Everyone thinks he's an ordinary guy as long as he's one of the top commanders of the country's military. He is the one who is called the Emperor of Heaven, and his main rule is that no one threatens his family. The older man was looking at his wrecked car. He turned to the man he recognized, who had met him at the school gate. The senior demanded compensation from him for the broken car. He gave him a choice. Either he pays or he doesn't leave. All the people were looking at this situation. Zhentian asked his sister why they were celebrating her birthday today, even though it wasn't today. She said that 10 years ago, it was on this date that her aunt saved her, so her father made it his second birthday. But they do not forget about the first date. Zhentian wants to give her something. He went to the car to get the present. In his hands was a potted pomegranate tree. Ashwan took it, marveling at its beauty, and thanked her brother for the gift. While they were chatting, a disgruntled Lao Hu was looking at them in the background. He didn't understand why they were ignoring him. The senior was absolutely furious that he was standing so calmly after crashing his car and was ready to beat him to death. One of his friends calmed him down, asking him not to get excited, and offered to let him talk to this guy. The elder gave him one chance. The guy told Jiantian that he couldn't crash the car and leave just like that. He demanded $3 million, $2 million for the car, and $1 million for the old man's head. Jiantian asked Ashwang to take him to his aunt's place when he was done with this trash. After all, he hadn't seen her in 10 years. Ashwan was embarrassed when he mentioned her aunt. He was afraid that something might have happened to her and asked his sister, taking her by the shoulders. My sister said that my aunt was really experiencing some problems, although she asked me not to tell anyone about it. Jiantian asked them to talk about it when they got home. The bandit was angered by the guy's reaction and wanted to check out how he would behave in another situation. The bandit informed the elder that the guy wasn't a rich kid from a family in Haidong, and he was just too arrogant. The whole gang was going to deal with him. Ashwan hid behind her brother, saying that she was afraid. He told her not to be afraid because he was here with her. Cao, on the other hand, was holding a machete. Jiantian asked with a smile where the tea he asked for was, but the man was about to stab him with the blade, sending him flying. He knocked the gun away with his hand. Cao's elbow hit the forest, sending him flying. The other tried to hit him with the bat, but he dodged the blow by crouching down. At that moment, Jiantian stabbed the guy in the stomach. From behind, another of the bandits tried to attack with the same bat, but Jiantian grabbed his arm. With the other hand, I slapped him across the face with my fist. One of them was running up from behind with a stick in his hands. The bandit swung the stick, but Tian jumped back from the floor, doing a backflip. He landed on the boy's back, knocking him down, wrapping his arms behind his back. Another of them tried to hit the head with a bat. Jiantian deftly dodged again. After going around the enemy, he threw him several meters away with a single blow on the back. The leaders watched on as one simple guy scattered the entire crowd of their subordinates. They couldn't believe it. Jiantian called Senior Lao Hu over to say something. The older man was sweating profusely from fear, but all he said was that there was no need to be so sure, because there was always someone who was stronger than him. He was going to make one call and challenged him to stay if he wasn't afraid. Jiantian decided to give him one chance. While Big Brother was calling, people just watched as the guys couldn't recover from his punches. The older one had ordered him not to go anywhere, because his cousin would be here soon and kick his ass. The second one said that his cousin is the boss of this area, and he has a lot of fighters behind him. He should have left earlier, but now he was in great danger. They ordered him to hand over his sister and the money, before falling to his knees and asking for forgiveness from the elder, or die when his cousin arrives. The father suddenly found out who this stranger was, and that he was the brother of his adopted daughter. He immediately turned to Jiantian, asking him to leave because such a person should not be messed with. There used to be a cafe on the site of that store, but the owner did not pay money for protection, and a couple of days later he had an accident and broke his leg, leaving him disabled. Jiantian picked up a folding chair and placed it next to him. He thanked the man for taking care of his sister all these years. He had put his father in the chair, and now he was telling him that he didn't need to work so hard anymore, because now he was here to provide him with a decent future without worries. The guys hearing this laughed, because he can't even protect himself, and at the same time tries to help people. His father thanked Jiantian for his kindness, but he advised him to take Aiden and leave before it was too late. Even my sister told my brother to leave, because even if he was strong, he wouldn't be able to fight such a pack. But Jiantian assured her that he wasn't alone at all, with thousands of elite soldiers and military personnel behind him, who could travel thousands of kilometers across rivers and mountains. That made the older man laugh. He told him not to brag about empty words, but even if it was true, to call them here and prove it clearly. At this moment, a car drove up to the place. Another one came for the car before they surrounded them. People started coming out of it. It was Lao Hu's brother who arrived. He ordered the ungrateful dog to be brought to him. Lao Hu immediately accepted his order. He ran to grab Jiantian and take him to his brother, but he only turned around and slapped Lao Hu across the face, causing him to fall. The second of them ran at Tian for daring to act like this even in front of Brother Yao, but he didn't listen to him either, hitting him the same way, knocking him to the ground. Lao Hu turned to his brother, telling him how much the brat didn't respect his status. As he took a bite of the cooked meat, he ordered Jiantian to crawl over on his lap while he counted to 3. He said the number 1, my father and Ashwan were worried. The aunt introduced herself to Brother Yao as Xia Qingye from the Xia family, and asked them to let them go for the sake of her family's name. She thought that Brother Eden had solved the problem by beating up that crowd, but she didn't know that they had such connections, and now it would be very difficult to solve it. But her brother didn't care because no one in her family had the right to talk to him like that. let alone her. She said that as a teacher, Eden couldn't bear to watch her student being taken away. Jantian was surprised by this girl's courage, even under such pressure. He thanked her for taking care of his sister and said that he would manage on his own. But she just yelled at him because it was all his fault that they were in such trouble now. Brother Yao counted to 2, and Jantian finished the score to 3 on his own. This offended Brother Yao very much. But when he looked at the guy, he was taken aback. He couldn't believe that the guy in front of him wasn't ordinary. He was shaking with fear. Yao's brother was a security manager at the Tiandu Hotel. The older man thought his brother was shaking with anger. They started adding fuel to the fire by ordering him to kneel in front of their brother. While everyone was jeering, Cao picked up a glass from the floor. He took it and spat on it. He walked over to Jantian and Brother Yao to hand him another tea. But before he could finish the joke, Brother Yao slapped him across the face. He started giving him his own tea, calling him a dumb idiot if he wasn't afraid to treat this guy like that. They couldn't understand why Brother Yao would change his mind. After asking, the older one was slapped in the face by his own cousin. He didn't give them the right to even say a word in Jantian's direction. His brother started beating him up since he wants to die, but don't let him drag him along. The other guy decided to run away before he got hit too. My brother hit him too, because he dared to insult this guy and get away with it. From the powerful impact, he fell to the ground. But he was just an informant, and he didn't even have anything to do with it. Brother Yao started kicking him for snapping back. After beating up the guys, the brother ran back to Jantian, apologizing. He started bowing to him, saying that he didn't know who he was messing with and begged to be spared this time. The people around couldn't understand why Brother Yao was bowing to this guy. My father was surprised at how cool Brother Yiding was to have Brother Yao kneeling in front of him. But still, behind them was Pu Xiao himself, who had as much power as the Chen family. No matter how strong this guy is, he won't be able to stand up to them. She also didn't expect this guy to be more powerful than her grandfather's name, but in any case, he's just strong. Po's family is something he can't beat. Jantian spoke to Brother Yao, telling him that Long Yiding was his sister, and when she was being chased by his gang, he didn't plan on letting her go. So he rejected his request for mercy and threw him away like trash. This caused him to hit the wall. Jantian raised his hand and ordered Cao to come over. With a single thought, Cao was in his hands. Tian asked about the tea again with a smile. Cao tried to apologize and offered to do it now, but the hand was pressing down on his throat. Before he could finish, Tian threw him away. Then he looked back. The elder was already lying in fear, trying to apologize to Mr. Zhang, explaining that he was only following Pu Xiao's orders. He'll find it later, but for now, he wants to even up the score between them. Taking it by the head, he started dragging it behind him. He carried him by the hair to his car. Chantian led him to the very window that Lao Hu himself had doused and ordered him to clean it with his mouth. The older one really didn't want to do this. Lao Hu began to talk Jantian out of it, because he had already done enough to stop embarrassing him. Jantian was surprised by the audacity. He can't even beat him, and still tries to bargain. He slammed Lao Hu into the car window. Hitting it against the window, he said that it wasn't even worth haggling with. Jantian, after a couple of punches, once again invited him to lick the window. With a bloody nose and tears in his eyes, he immediately agreed. The older man began to lick the dirt off the glass, which he had screwed up himself. Jantian called over his informant friend. It reminded him of his words, that it would make him bow down on his knees. The boy stumbled to Mr. John's side. He fell to his knees in front of him, wildly apologizing for his words because it was he who should have knelt and bowed. The guy tried to start bowing, but Jantian slapped him in the face. It flew off and fell to the ground. Jantian walked over and explained that he couldn't even bow to him. That's how pathetic he was. After saying that, he grabbed him by the throat. He started slapping him at an insane speed. After beating him, he threw him to the ground. The guy was still trying to admit his guilt for what he'd done. He was slapped in the face again for saying that. Jantian asked him, since he knew that he was wrong, what should he do? The boy's battered face stared back at the master. After a moment, the boy turned his gaze to Eden's father. He crawled up to the old man on his knees, begging for forgiveness. Grabbing his leg, he begged for mercy. The senior, licking the car, was interrupted from his lesson when he saw such a picture. He decided to run over as well. Falling to his knees, he also began to beg for forgiveness, begging to be released. He promised to pay him 10 times what he was paying him. But then the whole gang bowed down before the old man, asking for his forgiveness. At the same time, Brother Yao crawled up to Jantian. He started begging for mercy because it wasn't his fault. But Jianyi didn't say it was his fault. Brother Yao didn't understand why he had beaten him up so badly back then, if he knew about it. But then Jantian ordered everyone to break one of their arms, and then they could leave. This made him beg even harder. Jantian ignored the request and started counting down from the number 2. They all began to accept their guilt, trying to avoid punishment. But the score had already reached the number 3. And even so, they tried to get away with it. He ordered the entire arm to be broken, and if they made one more sound, he would blow their heads off. They realized that they could not escape punishment. Brother Yao felt confident and ready to do it. He picked up the bottle and swung it. The bottle shattered on his left hand. The guys saw this sight and realized that it was they who really had to break their arm. Everyone started picking up different weapons to use. A friend informant took a machete and cut his arm open. After everyone had fulfilled his wish, he ordered them to get out of here. The sister admired her brother's power and wanted to go home, but her teacher stopped them, wanting to talk to him. She pulled Jiantian aside. Since he was Aiden's brother, she decided to say directly that he might be strong, but things were much more dangerous in Haidong than he thought. After all, he can't stand up to the Chen and Pu families, which might affect Ideng's safety at school. She explained that such actions can lead to danger, and she doesn't even know if his appearance was good or bad for Eden. Jiantian thanked her again for taking care of her sister, but he was much more domineering than she thought. With that, he ended the conversation and turned to leave. This made the girl very angry. Jiantian went home with his sister and her foster father. He couldn't believe that his dear sister was living in such poor conditions. Going inside, he noticed how small the rooms were. The floor was concrete and there was no air conditioning. The sister of an influential war god lived in such conditions. What a shame. The father apologized to Jiantian for not being able to take care of the little girl and making her suffer. Jiantian only praised the old man for his care and did not dare to accuse him of anything. My sister made hot water, apologizing that they didn't have tea, and invited the whole family to sit down and talk. My father decided to go do the laundry while my brother and sister, who hadn't seen each other in 10 years, could talk. Jiantian stopped him, handing him special bruising patches that would quickly repair the wounds. It was an elixir made by the same man who had taken it from his sister 10 years ago. Thanks to him, he is alive after many years of wars, where he received a variety of severe wounds. Sitting down on the sofa, Jiantian asked where Uncle Long's wife was and why he had never seen her. It turned out that she died 8 years ago, and only her father raised her all these years. Her face changed, became very sad. Jiantian placed his hand on hers. He reassured her that if anyone hurt her, he would kill them all. He was very angry at Pu Xiao for setting his sights on the sister of the war god himself. And just like that, he was willing to take revenge on the man who once abandoned his wife, and Jean was willing to shed his blood to honor his mother's memory. The next day, my sister informed my father that she and my brother were going to visit my aunt, and he could stay at home. He just smiled and wished me luck on the road. It's already been an hour. There's a new gang in the area. With a kick, the gang leader broke down the squishy wooden door and entered his father's house. These guys were negative. The red-haired man took his father by the collar, asking if he had the 5 million yuan he owed to the Sky Eagle Company, and when is he going to pay back the debt. Mr. Long only asked if Mr. Lau knew about it and demanded to bring Senior Lau here to talk to him in person. He had once borrowed 100,000 yuan from them to make an investment, but it had failed, and he didn't expect that this debt would turn into 5 million in 3 years. The leader started hitting him, not understanding who he thought he was to have the right to challenge Senior Lau. But at that moment, his phone rang. It was Senior Lau. He politely picked up the phone and said whose house he was in, and Manager Lau was going to come over soon. After the conversation, he immediately threatened the old man to wait for his death, because the elder will be here any minute. Mr. Long advised him to be more polite, because he would be in trouble when Senior came. For saying that, he slapped him in the face. He clarified how he dared to speak to him in such a tone. The leader decided to take a machete and kill the old man before the elder arrived, so that he wouldn't talk nonsense. He only has time to swing, but then he is informed that the senior has arrived. He handed the machete back to his masovka to meet the older man properly. Senior Lau came in with his boys. The red-haired man immediately began to describe the whole situation, that this old man again did not want to pay his debts and even asked for a meeting in person, and he was going to kill him now. But he was immediately slapped in the face by the senior for treating Mr. Long like this. Fortunately, he asked Brother Yao yesterday, and now he knows how scary he is. His assistants began to heckle him, telling him to ask for his forgiveness. They urgently need to apologize, or they will lose their heads. The guy couldn't understand what was going on. The older man handed Mr. Long the debt agreement, telling him that he had completely canceled it since they were now friends. But he didn't expect that red jerk to come and demand 5 million. The elder ordered him to apologize to the old man for cheating. The bandit didn't understand when the elder had changed his mind. While he was thinking, they kept hurrying him to apologize, kicking him in the face. He immediately got down on his knees and began to apologize to Mr. Long. The old man started punching the red-haired man in the face. The battered boy begged him to forgive him. But Mr. Long wasn't going to stop after all. He had been beaten up so many times over the years, and now he was going to take his revenge in full. When they were done, they sat down across from each other, and Senior Lau handed the old man a box of money for yesterday's meal. But even the bandit knew that 2 million yuan was an absolutely unrealistic amount for a piece of mutton. The old man knew that they were here for Mr. War, and he couldn't take the money until he forgave them. At that name, the senior smiled and asked where he was now. Mr. Long said that he was at his aunt's house and that he would give them the address. They thanked him and made him take at least 20,000 yuan for yesterday's food and broken furniture. Gentian's car was parked outside the house. He and his sister got out of it. As they walked into the courtyard, they saw children playing. But on closer inspection, it turned out that two children were humiliating one by beating him with a stick. Ashwan did not put up with this and immediately turned to the children. At her voice, the children began to run away and laugh, insulting the poor child after her. The beaten child turned to the girl, saying that he wanted a chupa chups. It turned out to be my aunt's child, Xiao Guang. The kid hid behind his sister, afraid of the unknown guy, but Ashwan asked to greet her brother. Jantian asked why Xiao Guang had become so downtrodden and where his father was. The sister said that when he was born, the aunt noticed that he had mental problems, and after such news, their insensitive father left the family. After that, he got married and joined a powerful family, but even so, he never saw his son or paid child support. The poor aunt visited every hospital in China to help her son, but it was of no use, so they had to live together so that she wouldn't suffer. When Zhan Tian was a child, he never liked his aunt's husband because he was tough and only liked rich people. But he didn't expect this jerk to abandon his own child and wife. After a couple of minutes, they went to their aunt's house and Ashwan greeted them. My brother and sister came into the room holding hands and my aunt was lying on the bed. Gentian noticed that his aunt's house was in much better condition than Ashwang's. It showed her hard work in life with her sick son. My aunt sat reading a magazine and was delighted to see them. Ashwan immediately ran up to the woman in alarm, asking if she was sick. But she just smiled, because it was just the flu and she would recover in a couple of days. She looked at the unknown guy and asked him to introduce her. Jantian took her hand and introduced himself with a familiar name. My aunt jumped out of bed at the realization. She looked at Jantian, thinking that he would never come back. Tears sprang to her eyes from the happiness of an unexpected reunion. The children sat down by the bed of the aunt, and the sister remembered how the aunt lived in a large house with an area of more than 1,500 square meters. But then it was demolished, and the aunt bought 6 houses? Then why does she now live in such a small apartment? It turned out that while the aunt was running to the doctors, her ex-husband forcibly took most of the property. In the end, she was left with only this small house and all the available money she spent on the treatment of the child. Jantian didn't understand. Her name should have been on all the property documents, whereas this jerk took everything for himself. It was a building built on a historical site, so its price was greatly inflated, more than 100 million yuan. Her aunt coughed, and Ashwan patted her on the back. She began to tell me that this scoundrel had entered the Pu family's company, that they were not new to the construction business. And thanks to fake documents, they were able to take away her property, giving it to the landowner, and now it is rented out to the Pu family. When his mother passed away, at that time his aunt was one of the wealthiest women in the city. But then because of the bastards in life, that aunt lost everything. As he peeled the apple, he told his aunt not to worry because he would take care of everything. Holding out the peeled apple, he promised his aunt that he would not let these scum go after their actions. But suddenly, someone knocked on the door. A guy wearing glasses and classic clothes walked into the room. Auntie greeted him with a smile, calling him Brother Chan. She immediately introduced him as a young master from the Jiang family, and also introduced him to Zhan Tian. Chang was surprised by Ashwan's brother and assumed that he was a graduate. Zhan Tian didn't answer Brother Chang's question, ignoring it. Instead, he asked his aunt if she liked the apple, which angered Brother Chan. The aunt noticed the tense situation and noticed that Brother Chang was looking after her well and helping her. When Zhan Tian didn't respond, he gave an angry grunt. He began to voice his displeasure to the guy on the back, considering him an ill-mannered brat. Bragging about his position with their company, Zhang Hao, being one of the main faces, and offered to help him with the job, suggesting that he would have no future. And he offered to come tomorrow for an interview, offering a place as a manager because they do not have enough employees. To Brother Chang's surprise, Zhan Tian refused such a lucrative offer. The man was surprised at the pride of a brat who has nothing in life. He decided to continue to persuade, because their restaurant chain will soon enter the top 3, and such an offer does not come across every day. After all, dozens of people are fighting for this position to become part of their great company. Auntie listened to Brother Chang's suggestion and tried to persuade Zhan Tian to give it a try. But Zhan Tian said that he was already working and was satisfied with everything. Brother Chan laughed at his work and was moved by his dedication to his place. But he still kept up with his job offer. Since Zhan Tian had just graduated from high school, it would be a good chance to start his future career not from the first stage, but from the second stage. The guy just got up from his chair and ignored another question. Zhan Tian handed his aunt a glass of water with a caring smile. Brother Chang couldn't believe the guy's impudence in accepting his beneficent offers, but he decided not to press the matter. After that, there was a sudden knock on the door. Chang's cousin Sai Jiang came into the room. His aunt immediately started yelling at him to get out of here. Ashwang explained to Jiang the reason for this reaction, because this person is very fond of bullying others, especially those who are lower in status. But he also has a weight in the area, so it's best not to mess with him. Sai Jiang came to try again to persuade his aunt to sell him her shack. The aunt was aggressive and started to chase the bandit away again. Sai Jiang started shouting that she didn't have enough money to pay the rent anyway, because all she did was go to the doctors and he was offering a price suitable for this house. Suddenly, the little brother appears and shouts at the bad uncle to leave. He went to him, telling him not to come to his house. The bandit took the child off his feet with one blow and he fell to the floor. The boy began to cry. Ashwan approached her brother, trying to calm him down. My aunt spoke outrageously to the bandit, but she couldn't finish because she was disturbed by a cough. Jiantian turned around to look at the man. Brother Chang urged Jian not to do anything stupid because he would regret it. He can't even say anything at a time like this. He tried to tell his cousin that he was overreacting. Sai Jiang didn't accept his brother's claim, slapping him in the face for being disrespectful. It turns out that he has already found buyers for this apartment, and they are not going to wait long, so you need to decide this here and now. Brother Jiang Nam is stunned by the blow from his own brother. Sai Jiang simply called Chang a useless trash. At this moment, the figure of Jian Tian appears in front of him. Sai Jiang didn't expect this, but he said that that puppy wouldn't be able to stop him. His words offended Jian, and he asked about the puppy again. Jiang was referring to the aunt's son that he had just pushed away. The bandit spat on the ground and ordered to get out of the way, otherwise it would be bad. He was about to strike out and force Jian Tian to leave him alone. But as soon as the bandit tried to kick him, Jian Tian was already standing on the other side. Sai Jiang's foot hit the bed, causing him to yell in pain, almost crying. Jian Tian said with a smile that he was in a good mood today, and he forgave him this time if he bought medicine and left. Suddenly, the bandit took out a knife from somewhere, intending to use it on the arrogant brat for looking down on him. Auntie noticed this and warned John. She knew that this man always got what he wanted, and he doesn't know when to stop. Ashwan and brother Chang looked on in surprise, waiting to see what would happen next. Jian Tian knocked the knife away from the enemy with a single flick of his hand. After hitting the bandit, he flew several meters away, so much so that he knocked out the door to the room with his body. The bandit started whining that he couldn't do this to him because he was the same Sai Jiang, but he was willing to forgive him if he apologized. Jian Tian waved his hand, and from this, the bandit sitting on the floor flew up again. He did a somersault, hitting the ground again and again, bouncing like a ball. Sai Jiang shook his head, claiming that just one call could kill the impudent man. Meanwhile, Brother Chan, who was watching, was surprised by the guy's ferocity and strength, as if he was a mighty great tree. After the incident, my aunt advised me to pick up Ashwan and leave immediately. After all, Sai Jiang never leaves such a thing for nothing, and next time he will not return alone. Jian Tian was calmly peeling an apple with a knife. He tried to calm her down by explaining that a jerk like him was nothing to him. At these words, Brother Chang almost died of shock. Chang suggested that Jiang still concede, despite how strong he is because he is alone. And since he will have such problems, he is not ready to help him with the work, no matter how much he wants to. Although they were brothers, but in comparison, Sai prefers to solve everything with violence, so he has certain connections. One of the gentlemen from the Han family crossed his path, and as a result, received a broken leg. Handing over the peeled apple, Zhan promised that within 3 days, the Xianglong group would return the property, the money for the demolished house, and the unpaid profits. Hearing this, Brother Chang laughed so hard that saliva flew out of his mouth. He began to explain to him about the power of the Xianglong company, because it includes the Chen family, Shangguan, and Pu, and they are engaged in any kind of industry, whether on land or on water. Each of the families brings a certain benefit to the company, spreading throughout China. But he reassured him because no one would hold him accountable for his words here, so he could continue to talk nonsense. While the boys argued, the younger brother looked out the window, and at that moment, a brick flies through the window. The brick breaks the glass, hitting the child directly in the forehead. Everyone immediately turned around and was shocked. Ashwan ran to the child, holding his forehead, trying to calm him down. Chen Tian stared out the window, trying to figure out what the problem was. There was a huge crowd outside the window. They were the people of Sai Jiang, who was ready to take revenge and asked him to come down to prove his words, threatening that he might also get up. The aunt, who was helping her son, asked Jian Tian not to go there because there were too many of them and he would definitely get hurt. Ashwan knew what her older brother was capable of, so she asked him to teach the scoundrel a lesson. Jian Tian accepted his sister's order with great pleasure. At the same time, he jumps through the window shards. He lands like a superhero, cracking the ground with his fist. Standing up, he looked at the crowd with a proud smile, as if mocking them. A large figure that Sai Jiang called Big Brother started to walk out of the crowd. rejoicing at his arrival. It turned out to be a big man with a scar on his eye, and Sai started complaining to him about John for beating him up, and immediately began threatening him that after meeting Big Brother Bao, he would regret everything. The older brother immediately called John a useless bag of bones. Not understanding how he could interfere with his business, he was starting to get annoyed with people who thought they could compete with the savannah. But since it was a good day, he only had one of his limbs broken. After all, his purpose of arrival was originally to greet an important figure, and it is worth trying. Looking at his phone, he found out that they would be arriving here very soon, so he needed to deal with this small matter quickly. Sai Jiang started yelling at Jiang Tian, thinking that he was shitting his pants out of fear, so he didn't say anything. Jiang Tian only laughed at his boldness. One of them was about to stab him with a stick, charging at John, telling him to stand still. But he couldn't do it, because John kicked him on the head, knocking him down. Everyone was ready to join the battle on Sai's orders. Jiang Tian looked down. He saw a stick with which one of the bandits was running at him and stepped on it. With a single kick, he lifted the stick from the floor. The stick flew up to the level of his outstretched arm, and with the help of a strong push, the stick flew at the enemies, taking the crowd of 5 people with it, demolishing them. They began to fall to the ground, breaking bones. With a stern look, Jiang Tian asked who threw that brick through the window. Sai Jiang was afraid that his guys were losing, so he frantically turned to Big Brother Bao, who was on the phone at the moment, to urgently deal with this madman. Brother Bao was surprised at how problematic this kid was. A huge crowd ran towards Wanjian, intending to kill him. Auntie, watching the battle, couldn't believe that Sai had brought so many people and how little John would be able to deal with them all. Brother Chan was just angry at his stupidity, that he had angered the people at Savannah, and now nothing was going to help him. One of the men swung at him with a machete, but Jan threw a sharp punch to the stomach. He was being attacked all over the circle by a bunch of guys with different types of weapons. As they were about to attack, Jan stood on his hand, pushing off from the ground. With a push, he dodged several attacks at the same time, doing a somersault skyward. He started to land. Falling to the ground, he created a strong shockwave that blew the bandits away. A guy with a bat was running at him, and he got into a fighting stance, ready to take a step. He lunged forward, punching the boy in the face before he could move. The bandit fell, but another man with a katana was running at Jan from behind. Jan grabbed his sword arm, dodging the blade. An explosion formed around them, blowing everyone around them away. He hit the bandit, blood pouring out of his nose as he fell to the ground. The guy fell sideways right in front of Sai and Big Brother Bao, their mouths hanging open in shock. Bao couldn't understand how this man could do all of this, since it was impossible. Jiang Tian adjusted his cape, intending to ask again. With a menacing look, he asked again who threw the brick. The 3 of them were standing in the middle of the street, the bodies of bandits littered in smoke. Big Brother Bao pointed at Sai, saying that it was he who threw the brick, and then took it back, because it was none of his business who threw it. Sai Jiang immediately made excuses that he only wanted to say hello, fearing that he would get it from Zhan. Instantly, Jiang Tian sent Sai sprawling to the ground, smoke swirling around him. From the fall, Sai coughed up blood as Jiang looked on mercilessly. He waved his hand using his abilities. At that moment, the blow landed on Sai's wrist like a bolt of lightning. Raising his hand, Sai was horrified to find that his hand was missing, and he screamed. Jiang Tian invited Bao to bow down to him, asking him to repeat his recent words. Bao panicked, trying to play it off as a misunderstanding. All of a sudden, he got a phone call asking him if he was preparing for a meeting of important people, because they would be arriving any minute. But he cried into the phone, because unforeseen circumstances prevent him from properly preparing for the meeting. The man on the other side of the phone was surprised, and said that he would come in a couple of minutes and deal with whoever was interrupting. Big Brother Bao had some hope of survival. Bao happily ran up to Zhang, announcing his big brother's imminent arrival, and he's willing to give him a chance to apologize and work for him to make up for his mistakes. He suggested we forget about today, but as he approached, Bao only received Zhang's fist in the face. From the strong impact, the fat man fell down. Jiang Tian refused and ordered him to hand it over to his boss, so that when he arrived here, he would immediately kneel down and start apologizing. Leaving the battered Bao, Zhan went home. Evil Bao only promised that he would destroy it when the boss came here. A few minutes later, he returned to his aunt's house, and Brother Chang started to remember who Boss Bao was. He was the Tiandu hotel manager's cousin, Brother Kum, and since the hotel was owned by the Chen family, no one would cross them. I mean, he's almost part of the Chen family, so if you kill one of his people, even God won't save you. Auntie panicked at these words, trying to correct the situation. She remembered that Brother Chang worked at Tiandu Hotel and asked for his help. He decided to try to help for the sake of his aunt. Brother Chang started calling various people on the phone. He gathered all his possible connections to deal with the problem. When he finished, he let out a relaxed sigh. Proudly, he informed them that they would cooperate if Zhan knelt down and apologized to Brother Bao and Brother Kum. And that was the only way. Jiantian was calmly peeling another apple. Brother Chang happily asked John to go downstairs with him to wait for the brothers to apologize. As John handed the apple to his aunt, he told her that he had told Bao to pass on the words to Boss Kum so that he would kneel down and apologize. At these words, Brother Chan's heart stopped for a second because this is crazy. Sweat dripped down his face as he tried to impress upon his aunt that he was not guilty in this situation, because her nephew was too arrogant and ungrateful, and it was impossible to cooperate with him. But then, there was a loud knock on the door, shouting in parallel. The door was knocked open, and it was Brother Kum, the one whose arm Jean had broken long ago, and he was ready to look at the madman who dared to say such a thing to his brothers. Bao was already smiling at the prospect of revenge, pointing at the culprit. Mistaking Brother Chang for an impudent man, he pointed frantically at John. Jan appeared behind Chang, not understanding what the problem was. As he ate the apple peel off the knife, he only wondered why these idiots had come up here, since he ordered them to bow from below. Brother Kum was horrified that this was the third time he had fallen for the god of war himself. Brother Bao was smiling. He began to threaten him again, thinking that his brothers would deal with him 1 or 2 times. Bao turned to his godfather to show the brat where he belonged, but Kum just stood there in horror, realizing the absurdity of what was happening, and a second later, he slapped Bao's face. The fat man fell to the floor. When he realized it, he didn't understand why he had been hit or what he had done wrong. But before he could finish, a boot hit him, covering his mouth. Kum began to explain that Mr. Zhan was a very respectful person and that he had no right to say that about him. The guys realized their mistake and what they did in the direction of a person who stands above them. Bao tried to steer the situation, claiming that it wasn't his fault at all. Grabbing Sai Jiang by the hair, he threw all the blame on him because he was the one who directed all the dogs at Zhan. Releasing it, he slammed it to the floor. Bao knelt in front of Zhang, admitting his mistake, trying to plead for his freedom and that of his brother. The entire squad got down on their knees, offering him the money they were owed. The godfather held out an envelope with money, to which they added more on top because they have a large family. Brother Chang was completely shocked that he was handing him a whole 10 million yen, which is several times less than his annual salary. As he continued to peel the apple, Jean praised him for taking care of his family and was satisfied with his apology, ordering him to put the envelope on the table. Kum put the envelope on the table, still on his knees. All the guys hurried out. Finally, the house became quiet, and it was already evening. The whole family sat at the table after years of separation. Jan said that he would divide the money received into 2 and give 5 million each to his father and aunt. Auntie didn't expect this. It was already too much. He had already done too much for them. Shuang held her aunt's hand, reassuring her that the money could be used to treat her son, Xiaoguang. My father was willing to accept the money, but he wasn't going to be lazy. He was sure that he could not cope with the role of a worthy father, so he was ready to increase this money. But this family warmth that he felt at this table, no amount of money can replace. He decided to take the money and start a new business. Previously, his business grew rapidly in a short period of time, but he too often trusted people, because of whom he lost everything in a second. But even after that, he did not stop thinking about it. He clapped Zhan Tian on the shoulder and promised that in 3 years, he would pay him back 5 million, and not yen, but dollars, or even more. Zhan Tian was happy with his father's enthusiasm, and he believed in his father's idea. Suddenly, someone called him, and he took out his phone from his inside pocket. A rough, masculine voice came over the phone, raised in pitch, because Zhan Tian was the one who puts a stick in his wheels. Zhan guessed who the unknown person was from the phone, calling him by his first name, Pu Xiao. Pu Xiao only laughed at him while relaxing by the pool with the girls. Since he's very busy, he went straight to the point. He invites Jiang to come and explain himself for his actions. Jiang immediately asks when the meeting can be arranged. Pu Xiao liked his confidence and told him to come to Xingwan at 12 o'clock tomorrow. And if he didn't come, he would also face consequences for cheating. The butler at the back turned to the master, not understanding why he was calling such a midge. I told him to take a couple of guys, deal with him, and kidnap his sister. But Pu Xiao is having too much fun. It's not every day that you see such a guy, and it's very interesting for him to see him. With a rush of emotions, the glass in Pu Xiao's hand cracked. While the family was having a quiet dinner, a cry was heard on the street about the end of the month and the salary. It was her aunt's boss who brought her a month's salary. My aunt got up from the table and left the apartment. When she reached the stairs, she saw her superiors, a fat man and a tall girl in a pink dress. The man took out a bag of money and held it out, smoking a cigarette. My aunt started counting the money, but the envelope was missing $200 and she didn't know why. The man said that since she was so often ill, it was deducted from her salary because the work was not completed in a full month. The girl was surprised. People do not work well, go on sick leave, and also demand something. But my aunt did not give up, because according to the law, the management cannot take money for sick days. The girl snapped, considering it too impudent, because her salary is not their fault. When she attacked her aunt, she began to get hysterical so that she would sue her and forced her to take the money so if she did not want to lose her job. Auntie stood her ground. They were doing too much, and they were breaking the laws and regulations. The man ordered her to accept the salary and be grateful that at least she got something. After these words, a larger figure appeared behind the man, who declared hatred for people who save on employees' salaries in order to fill their pockets. Turning around, there was no one there, and he ordered the mutt to appear. Shantian, Shuang, and Mr. Long appeared in front of them. The man smiled as he met Long Duqiang's old acquaintance. Pointing a finger at Zhan, he said that he looked very much like an old man, just as poor, and ordered him to get lost. Without finishing the sentence, someone suddenly jumped out of the bushes. It was Brother Kum, who slapped the man in the face for disrespecting Mr. Zhang. The man was in complete shock. Brother Kum reported to Zhang that he was sitting behind this fence, and when he heard this barking, he immediately came to calm down the naughty dog. The girl screamed at the godfather because how dare he hit Mr. Huang. But for saying that, she was also slapped in the face. The man holding his reddened cheek didn't understand what Mr. Daiki was doing here. The girl was taken aback because suddenly this guy is a major shareholder of the company. My godfather heard that they were stealing money from the workers' salaries. He started yelling at them because in their company even the cleaning lady gets more, and they pay less than half of the promised salary. Daiki turned to Zhang with a polite smile, asking how the boss wanted to deal with them. The man started to get up, a little shaken, and asked Mr. Zhan not to be angry, even though it's their fault. But it's not the end of the world. For saying that, Zhan kicked the man so that he flew off. Huang landed painfully on the ground. Zhan became disillusioned with Kum's authority because all his dogs want to eat him themselves, wondering how he became one of the main savannah. Daikai began to make excuses because this is only a one-time case and if you deal with them, the problem will be solved. Turning to his aunt, Zhan suggested that she decide what to do with them, because she was a victim. A man and a girl knelt in front of her, begging him to be kind to them and give them a chance to improve. The aunt was against violence, so she decided to give him a chance to improve, and that their work was paid according to the company's rules. Brother Kum assured her that for their actions of embezzling other people's money and encroaching on property, they had only one way to go. The man and the girl shook in horror. The action returns to Mr. Wen and his daughter, who is painting a paper while discussing the fate of that young man, taking an interest in his affairs. He understood that the relationship between the Wen family and the Chen family was damaged when he crippled the young master in the hotel, and Shangguan Nalan has already returned from abroad. Once Chen Badao returns, they definitely won't let this situation and the Wen family go just like that. But by adding old enemies, it might also be the end for their family. And as ridiculous as it sounds, the only person who can help in their difficult situation is that young boy. Mr. Wen looked at his daughter, who was very interested in the phone. She held out her phone to him, asking him to look at the picture. After seeing something on the phone, Mr. Wen realized that this guy was really Chen Badao's own son. And now it was clear why he'd been to the cemetery and dealt with the guys for desecrating his mother's grave. Mr. Wen took a glass from the table. As he swept through her, he was glad that they now had such an ally, and that they would stand together against Badao himself. But Xiaojue was surprised that Zhan didn't remember her back at the hotel, but they had grown up together, and he had even saved them 3 years ago. Mr. Wen was sure that in these past 10 years, he had experienced a lot, so he could be understood. And it's not his fault that he had to give up his family and loved ones in order to achieve such results and gain strength. Xiaozug pondered over her father's words. After assessing her reaction, Mr. Wen laughed at her reaction, suggesting that she remembered him and still felt something for him, and he offered her options for how she could get closer to him. Xiao only blushed at her father's words, not listening to his ramblings. She ran away in embarrassment, not wanting to discuss it, even though her father was right. Seeing him again made her feel strange. The case goes to the Chen family. Chen Er is lying in the bedroom, his legs amputated and wrapped in bandages, and the doctors and Shangguan Nalan are standing around the bed. Chen Er stretched out his hand and weakly called out to his mother to avenge him. This sight made Shangguan go crazy. She was angry, ready to avenge her son. Shangguan took the vase in her hand, shouting about Chen Badao's fault in everything. She smashed the vase on the floor in a rage, knowing that they needed to deal with everything to avoid this disaster. If they had done everything right, she wouldn't have had to pay such a price and her son wouldn't have been hurt. And so does the Wen family, that they chose some geek over them. But they will also get revenge. The old man's voice came from behind, and the doors opened. It was the Chen family elder, Chen Taquan. He entered with the help of his guards. Shangguan asked why her uncle had come here. Because of this Taquan's influence, he constantly orders her around and shames her in front of many people. He began to accuse Shangguan of carelessness, which caused his grandson to not only lose his legs, but also gain a terrible enemy, knowing that it was Zhan Tian who did it. Tang Wan has known Shifeng for many years, but he has never seen him like this. And he knows that the opposing side is too strong, and the Chen family can't afford to stand up to them. He always told her to be careful and watch her words for her own good, but she never listened to him and did what she wanted. And having raised such a son, he got into this situation. Shangguan was tired of listening to these lessons. A second later, she slapped the old man across the face. When he fell to the floor, Shangguan began to say everything that she had accumulated, because all he can do is teach others. If he wasn't the head of the family, she would have shot him. The old man couldn't believe that she dared to hit him. So Wan ordered his boys to get this crazy woman out of here. But after looking at their bodyguards, they didn't budge. He started spinning around, not understanding why they weren't listening to his orders. Shangguan mocked him because he had long since lost his power and was just an ordinary old man from a noble family who needed to be put down long ago. She ordered them to grab him and not let him go. The guards grabbed both of his arms, holding him down while Shangguan complained about his life being too long, and that he was going to places where he wasn't asked to go every year. Nellen started punching him in the face, filled with rage over the injuries of her sister and son, and for his words about her son's bad upbringing. Even so, he was trying to remind her that he was still the last head of the family and had a status. He started snapping at her, not understanding what the problem was with her life's teaching, and that her rash actions would ruin everything. Shangguan interrupted him, pointing the muzzle of the gun at his face. She didn't believe it, and was ready to start ruining the family with him. After saying that, she mercilessly shot at the old man. There is no turning back now. She inquired about Chen Lao's current location, and was told that he wouldn't be back until next week. This made her very angry, but she decided to let him stay for another week. She absolutely didn't care what this Jian Tian had achieved in these 10 years, but if he came for revenge, he must die. Jian Tian and his sister were walking at the school gate, escorting her to class. He asked her to tell him if anyone would hurt her, but she just smiled, because who could hurt her when he was so protective of her? She moved away a little and sweetly clarified that her brother was no longer young at all, and when he would bring his daughter-in-law to the house. Jian Tian smiled gently, his cheeks slightly flushed, and he was amused by the words coming out of her mouth. He reached out a finger and poked Ashwan lightly in the nose. Ashwan frowned and asked him not to take her words lightly because she was serious. A car pulled up behind them. Tank, Zhan's bodyguard, was driving, which was in complete agreement with Ashwang. He got out of the car to report on the mission and deal with the guys from Broad Road, and Old Man Guan helped him. But he broke off because he should introduce himself to the young lady. He identified himself as Uncle Tank, explaining that his job is to always be close and guard day and night. And since this was their first meeting, he prepared a small gift for her and handed her a new pink briefcase. Jian Tian slapped him in the face for his uncle status, because if he is already an uncle, then who is Zhan? Tank put an insulting hand on his cheek. He reworked his performance and asked Ashwan to call him Tank, because he wasn't that old yet. In fact, he was only 25, and immediately asked if she had a boyfriend. For this, he was once again slapped in the face by Zhan. For such nonsense coming out of his mouth, Ashwan laughed, because if he hadn't mentioned his age, she would have thought he was over 40. After sending her to school, they went on a business trip, and Tank told her that he had bought his boss a luxury mansion with a sea view. After all, since he's back here, he needs to have his own place where he can just lie down and relax. Jan smiled at his calculation, laughing at the excessive attention. Tank just laughed, because he did everything for the safety of his master. They drove on down the road. At this time, a classmate approached Eden, saying that their homeroom teacher asked her to come to her office. She came to the office at the request of the teacher. Eden came into the room, addressing Mrs. Wen. Mrs. Wen herself was standing at the table, holding a mug. After graduating from college, she was influenced by her father and came to Haidong's best high school as a language teacher. And when she found out that Zhan Tian's younger sister was studying here, she immediately became her homeroom teacher. Eden was starting to get nervous that the teacher was looking at her for a very long time. Not knowing what she had done, the teacher came up and asked where her brother was. The girl began to pull away, not understanding how she knew about his return. The supervisor was embarrassed and suggested that she introduce them. Eden smiled slyly, asking why she was so interested in her brother, assuming that she had fallen in love with him. For the past couple of years, Mrs. Wen had taken care of Eden and didn't reveal her true identity. So if she became Zhan's wife, she would be very happy. The teacher scolded her severely for laughing and asked her again, and Eden is ready to say, because she wants them to meet so that they can get married? Mrs. Wen was ready to scold her again. But Song Jing, the physical education teacher, came in and was glad to find Mrs. Wen. Eden decided to leave them alone and go back to class. He called out to the girl, having heard part of their conversation about his brother and couldn't understand what it all meant. But the teacher immediately dismissed his assumptions and said that he had imagined it. Mrs. Wen sent Eden back to class, Eden left the office. Songjang took out 2 Passion Machine 7 movie tickets that were very hard to get, and he asked when he could pick her up. But she immediately turned him down because she doesn't have time for this. He's angry, and she's already turned him down a lot of times, and he doesn't understand why. Sun assumed it was because of Iden's brother. Mrs. Wen immediately interrupted him. This is her personal matter, and he had better leave the office, and this has nothing to do with him. The physical teacher angrily left the office. He watched Iden go, blaming him for the mishap with Mrs. Wen, and was ready to deal with the fact that the girl had decided to become a matchmaker for her brother. Meanwhile, a classmate informed Iden that Zhao Zi, the queen of school bullies, was going to meet her after school and cause trouble, so she should be careful. But Eden wasn't afraid of her at all. The classmate was surprised at her calmness, because this Zhao Zi is constantly trying to annoy her, because against the background of Iden, she does not look very good. And it would end today, Eden was sure. With her brother's protection, even if the world ends, she's not afraid at all. The classmate was horrified. The action moves to the physical education room, where one of the people was carrying apples. Inside the study, the godfather and his brother were sitting on the sofa while people were serving them, giving them massages. It seems that school is already over, and they have already made sure that the Eden girl is safe and no one will touch her. They came to the school to show good behavior for the god of war, proving their loyalty. Kum stubbed out his cigarette, not ready to lose another arm. Songjung came into the office. He immediately lit up when he saw these guys and immediately introduced himself when he heard that they came to school to work as bodyguards. And in honor of meeting them, he would like to call them to the bar and ask for a request, if they do not mind. He didn't care what they were here for, but if he was of any use to them, he could go up a notch, he thought, as he handed them a cigarette. But the godfather declined the offer because they have an agreement that they should stay here. The physical education teacher decided not to bother me and said to contact us if you need anything. To get these two to do anything, one had to have a high status, and if he could make friends with them, then Wen Shui would definitely look at him differently. The godfather got angry at the importunity of the physical teacher because they themselves can take everything and do it, and ordered him to get out of here because he only spoils his mood. On the street, at this time, Eden fell into the trap of the queen of the school. He and his friend were standing with their backs to each other, surrounded by a huge crowd. It was Zhao Zi, who had planned to deal with Eden after school, and had fulfilled her promise. Iden's friend threatened Zhao Zi that she would regret it. Zhao Zi immediately silenced her, telling her that she shouldn't even let out a peep, or the consequences would be bad. Eden covered up for her friend, because they had only come for her in the first place. Zhao marveled at the girl's boldness, and assumed that her brother's return was the reason. But it turned out that it wasn't Zhao herself who was looking for her, and only helped organize the meeting. And at that moment, a guy comes up behind her and pulls the bag over her head. Zhao herself holds her friend while Iden is captured. After the incident, the friend ran to the school, trying to inform the teacher about it. She turned to the physical teacher that Long Iden was being kidnapped on the street and needed urgent help. But the gym teacher immediately yelled at her, because how dare she yell when there are such respectful people in the office? She continued to worry that if nothing was done, anything could happen to Eden. The physical teacher, of course, did not believe it, taking this as an excuse not to come to school. The girl was already beginning to cry from impotence. She saw everything with her own eyes and did not know how to prove it. The teacher ordered her to tell this nonsense elsewhere. She grabbed his hand, begging him to do something, and that Long Yiding had gotten involved with the bad guys for real. The godfather, hearing about this, ran up and knocked down the physical teacher with his elbow, asking for details from the girl. The girl was already crying as she called the men the name Long Yiding from class 3-1. The boys were shocked that the sister of the god of war was stolen, and they couldn't resist as they were ordered. The physical teacher began to dissuade the respected ones, because who would steal a student in the middle of the day? And since this does not sound plausible, do not worry and continue to rest. Kum slapped the teacher in the face because he doesn't understand the seriousness. He ordered him to pray that it was just a joke or wait for what Mr. Jian would do to him. The godfather ordered the girl to quickly take her to her place. A friend led the boys to the crime scene where Zhao's gang was stationed. She pointed a finger at the girl holding the cigarette, indicating that she had stolen Eden. Kum immediately began to attack her. The girl was frightened, but she started shouting back, calling him an old man because how dare he open his mouth on her. For this she will send her guys to him. Before she could finish speaking, he hit her. After falling to the ground, Zhao was stunned and was sure that the old man wouldn't just leave after that. She immediately ordered her guys to attack him, but none of them even dared to take a step, which shocked her. One of them whispered the reason in her ear. The girl couldn't believe it. Zhao immediately knelt in front of the man, apologizing for not recognizing him right away. He shut her up and got down to business, trying to find out where the girl was. Inside, he was very much afraid for Zhan's reaction, because he wanted to show how useful he was for the master, and if he did not bring the culprit's head, he might lose his second hand. Shaking, she explained that it was her brother, Yu Lijie, who did it, and she didn't know where he was taking her. But she asked for mercy because she couldn't disobey him. They remembered this name because he recently became the 8th brother, and while their eldest is absent, they decided to play. One of the guys started frantically calling someone, but in the end, he couldn't get through to any of them. Even so, it didn't add up. Since he had only recently become the 8th brother, his situation was quite bad, so he couldn't have the guts to do so. Someone was standing behind him, and he was emboldened to steal people in broad daylight, even though he was clearly not immortal. But they knew almost every point and hiding place of the fool, so they were prepared to search every crevice until they found him. Meanwhile, Tank and Jiantian arrived at the house that Tank had bought for him, the best mansion on the top of the mountain, and it offers the best view, which gives you a calm and peaceful feeling that is so rarely felt. Here you can settle down, start a family, and Ashwan can be settled nearby. Zhang Ye liked the sound of this, but he inquired about the items in his hands. This was the Black Robe Elder, an ancient Dark Heaven sect that is currently a closed Black Dragon Club. Tank did his best and brought 2 robes, an elder and a general, for which he was praised. She was making him think back, and he asked her how Jane was doing, sure that she had become even more beautiful. And it was time to meet Pu Xiao. People in evening clothes gathered in the square. Their calm was interrupted by a loud car coming their way. The car began to roll around the square, which made people wonder who this daredevil was that was driving around Pu's domain like this. The car went around in a circle, almost hitting people. People couldn't believe their eyes. This was young Master Pu Xiaogu's elite club. Immediately, people and a security guard started coming up to the car, ordering them to get out of here, and asking for forgiveness for their impudence. He started to approach but was stopped by another man. This may lower the status of this place because the townspeople know that entry is forbidden here, and it would be better for him to stop sticking and leave in his dilapidated car. Jiantian watched them through the window while eating a banana. He looked out and handed them the peel, because he had eaten it, and there was no place to throw it away, and asked them to do it for him. The man immediately flared up at the brat's words, as if he didn't know what he was doing or who he was talking to. He ordered him to get out of the car and ask for forgiveness. But Jiantian repeated his request, and one of them noticed the mark on his sleeve, and he recognized it immediately, the mark of the elite Black Dragon Club. His grandfather had told him about it, one of the most mysterious and influential organizations, and it was rumored that if members of the sect took on a cause, new rivers would arise. Only rivers of blood. The emergence of the sect was in the best interest of the country, so it has limitless resources and many assets in all possible areas. The man backed away, not understanding what the general might be doing here. The second man, who hadn't realized yet, continued to order the man in the car. For this, he was slapped in the face. Deputy Mahdi was thrown to the ground for his stupidity and carelessness with whom he speaks. The man immediately knelt in front of the car. He started to apologize because the little man couldn't possibly know what Taishan looked like, and they were willing to accept the punishment without running away, but they were sure that the great man could forgive. Jiantian only smiled, telling him to just do the request and then think about it. Opening the door, Zhan gets out of the car. Coming out with the tank, he asked if it was a problem that the car would be parked right at the entrance. Sweat poured down the man's face when he couldn't contradict the Great One. Jiantian asked to be taken to Pu Xiao. After a few minutes, they were taken to Pu Xiao's place. They were standing in front of him. A whole corridor of people lined up. The person behind him spoke to Pu Xiao, asking what to do next. He just smiled and decided to offer them a cup of tea first. People in suits started praising Pu Xiao's ways, about his tea path, and how powerful he was. They were sure that he was a worthy heir to his family. The man suggested that Pu Xiao deal with them and give them to the dogs. They had not eaten for a long time, but he didn't want to end the fun so quickly. Moreover, they were his guests, and all the guests of Pu are extraordinary, so it's worth lingering. The last guest reception was already a few years ago. Pusha was surprised that it was just the two of them and asked which of them was Long Yiding's brother. Jiantian immediately gave an answer. This amused the guy, so young and already doing this, but he was sorry because the young man was wasting his strength. And by the way, the guy under his feet is also smart and skilled. But you can see that John is better than him. But because of his carelessness, their acquaintance began with unnecessary fights, which can easily be omitted thanks to a simple apology, and then he will call him to work for him. Jiantian asked him to be quiet because he couldn't choose tea. Tank was disappointed that they brought so few varieties of tea. Senior likes tea and honors traditions, so they'd better hurry up and bring all the tea. Pu Xiao and his security guard were shocked. All the people present opened their mouths, but it amused him. He called them cool because they can see everything from the rose-colored glasses. But now Master Ma will help you take them off. In his hands was a bottle. Master Ma lashed out at Zhan, offering him a special herbal drink in a bottle. but the tank threw him away with one hand and he fell face down. The tank was surprised that it flew off in just one hit, so it wasn't so strong after all. Pu Xiao didn't expect this, and he knew that they would have to be punished. He ordered his men to capture them. People surrounded Jian Tian and Tank. Pu Xiao gave his men 30 seconds to complete everything. They were ready. The guys in suits started running at the two of them when the tank was sure it could do it faster. He grabbed one of them by the throat. The tank threw them out one by one as John calmly adjusted his sleeves. He walked over to the sofa and picked up one of the teacups from the table. Picking up the cup, he took a sip. With just one sip, he immediately realized that the variety was far from top-notch, as Pu Xiao had claimed, but he immediately accused him of lying, because he was confident in the quality of his tea. His friends have been in the tea business for over a decade, and they can't lie. It's Jane's problem that he doesn't know the tea traditions. But John explained that this particular variety was supposed to have a yellow-green hue, and the taste was sweet and delicate, giving the aroma of bean flowers. While making tea, Jean continued to explain. He described the tea that Pu Xiao had, because these varieties differ in color, and the second one had a slightly herbal aftertaste. Due to the fact that the second grade grows a month faster, it is often sold by unscrupulous merchants, under the guise of an expensive species for a huge price. The price is quite cheap, but Pu Xiao still had the guts to serve it to the guests and call it a tea ceremony. Pu Xiao started to get angry because he had been cheated and shamed, and he was slapping his leg while cursing his salesman. After making a second cup of tea from the table, he explained that this variety is also not the one that is claimed. After all, it does not have enough years of aging. The color is so-so, and the smell is not saturated enough. The sweetness and bitterness of the flavors are insufficient. Pu Xiao listened to his complaints in silence. Jan chuckled at his parody of the tea ceremony. He was incredibly angry at the guy for bragging about his knowledge. But if he was killed today, it wouldn't make any sense. While they were talking, one of his men flew over and hit the wall. Tank came up to them, brushing off his hands. He admitted that they were too weak, and he only used 30% of his strength. Behind him lay a crowd of battered boys. Pu Xiao couldn't believe his eyes. Jian Tian sat contentedly beside him on the sofa, reminding him of the promise to bring him delicious, high-quality tea. But everything he drank here was second-rate. After all, he had hoped that after drinking some delicious tea, his anger would go away. But he was disappointed. Jian Tian patted Pu Xiao's face, but Pu Xiao pushed his hand away, reminding him that he was in his territory after all, and that he was going to show him what pain was like today. Pu Xiao clapped his hands. The doors swung open, and a figure appeared behind them. It turned out to be a large crowd of agents with different types of guns, but their attack was interrupted by a guy named Ben Xiao, who tried to dissuade them. He stopped them, asking the master not to do so. Pu Xiao couldn't believe that he had interrupted his conversation with the guests, even so tactlessly. Ben Xiao tried to explain that these guests should not be offended and insulted, because they were not ordinary people. But before he could finish, Pu Xiao slapped him in the face for disrespecting him. He was a member of one of the 3 great families of Haidong and knows all the respectable people by sight. And these guys were just bugs. Ben Xiao tried to explain everything to him, but the master wouldn't listen. He started beating up the guys who got in the way because they doubted his authority, since he couldn't offend these guys. Pu Xiao pointed at the crowd of his guys who were taken aback and stood there doing nothing, ordering the 2 of them to be killed. Jian Tian sat quietly and ordered the tank to deal with them as well. He was only too happy about it, and he began to stretch his fists. One by one, he scattered the crowd like insects, threw all the guys out like garbage. Pu Xiao was sitting on the sofa, relaxed. With a smile, he asked Jian not to pretend that he had everything under control, since his death was very close. But Jian kept thinking about his second-rate tea, and abruptly changed his mind that it had some advantages. And I recommended you to drink it, because then you may not get the opportunity. There was a commotion outside the door. Jian calmly poured tea into a cup. 2 minutes later, the doors opened. Pu Xiao waited with a smile for the outcome of the fight, confident that his guys had everything sorted out. But all he saw was a tank entering the room with a bunch of dead guys lying behind it. Pu Xiao was shocked. The tank was standing in front of him, not a single scratch visible. He jumped up, not understanding how more than 100 people could be killed in a matter of minutes. Chan suggested that he use all the tricks to give him a chance. After that, the tank immediately hit him with a kick. He couldn't understand why the elder was wasting so much time on him, so he suggested that they find out quickly. But Pu Xiao stopped them, saying that there was no need to hurry, because he would not be able to pick up his sister from school in time anyway. These words made John extremely angry. Daiki and Lao Hu, those 2 useless guys, failed to fulfill the promise they had staked their lives on. Pu Xiao realized that he had hit a nerve and offered to prove his words with a single phone call. He called Yu Liji, asking his younger sister to say a few words to her brother, but the only person who answered his request was Dai Qi. who told him about the mishap on the road and the death of Yu Liji in the middle of the road, so he would never answer him again. Pu Xiao couldn't believe that Dai Qi had interfered with his business and promised that he would come for him when he was done. Jan slapped him across the face, taking the phone away. Holding the phone to his ear, he called out to Dai Qi, asking him to give it to his sister. Ashwan answered the phone, saying that she was fine and had already been rescued. Pu Xia recovered from the impact and stood up in fright. Jan asked if he had anything final to say. He couldn't figure out who he was or if he was even human, but he was immediately informed that he was from the Black Dragon. Pu Xiao's mouth dropped open in shock. How would he know about this just now? Zhan ordered them to take him with them. After a while, they found themselves at the pier. Beautiful sunset landscape by the water. Pu Xiao was sitting on his knees peering into the distance, with Zhan and Tank behind him. He couldn't believe what he'd done. Jan advised him to enjoy the view, as there was so little chance of seeing it again in his lifetime. Pu Xiao turned around and begged him to forgive him, because he didn't know that Long Yiding was his sister, and not a simple girl. He started bowing in frustration, banging his head on the hard ground, and swore that he would never hurt such a cute girl. Jan's words made him even angrier, because according to him, if a girl is from an ordinary family, you can do whatever you want with her. He threw a rock at Pu Xiao, telling him furiously about his life, how he had fought against 100,000 warriors, how as a child he had walked over corpses and he could not return home. Defending the country and its civilians, he spared no effort in his body, mind, and strength. But now that he's back home with his family, why should he deal with such scum who think they can get away with it? If so, then his sacrifice was in vain. He snapped and threw a handful of rocks at him. The pebbles flew at different parts of Pu Xiao's body with unreal force. Powerless, he fell to the ground, once again begging to be released, because he was the only son of the Pu family and they would pay any price for his life. Jan was surprised by these words and handed him the phone, intending to check it out. The case moves to the Pujia residence, where the head of the Pu family, Pu Xiaomu, stands with a glass of wine in his hands. He had an event there, where there was a large number of people who took turns approaching the chapter. One of the men came up to congratulate the head of state and wish him long life and health. The crowd cheered and also congratulated the man. He perked up, thanking the crowd for their wishes. At this point, a man runs in, looking for a master. He went over and whispered the news in his ear, but the man ordered him to say it loud and clear. He immediately revealed that Junior Master Xiao had been abducted, which was heard by everyone present. People were stunned by the news, and they also chose a time when the father celebrates his 60th birthday. The master immediately asked who had done it. No one knew who it was who had abducted him, because the call was made by the young gentleman himself and said that the negotiations should be conducted in person. The man didn't want to ruin his birthday and kill, so he handed him a card and asked him to pass it on. The people around him began to admire the wisdom of the master, since he decided to forgive the offender and give him the Jingo of the Pu family. Everyone began to praise the master for such a decision, because there is not a single person who would refuse such a gift. The Jingo of the Pu family is a pass to any place and beyond, a key to all doors. None of the most powerful families can refuse at the sight of the Jingo Pu family, so the kidnapper better realize the value of this gift and end there. They were all sitting on the pier, and Pu Xiao was trying to get his release. He was told that the master forgives his captors for such a joke and gives them a Jingo in honor of his birthday. But Pu Xiao shouted into the phone to give his father information about his kidnappers, because they are not ordinary bandits from the wide road, but the guards of the emperor themselves. He ordered them to hand over half of the Pu family's assets, securities, and jewelry, a portion of any property. But he was denied this, because no matter who the kidnapper is, when he arrives in Haidong, he will still meet with the head of the family and get what he deserves, so the young master can relax, and the head will save him someday. Pu Xiao panicked, because they can't be allowed in the house or it will be bad. But before he could say it, Jean took the phone out of his hand. He said into the phone that he was waiting for the owner to arrive. The person opposite reported that Master was merciful and willing to forgive him today, so it was better to let young Master go and take the gift away from the Pu family. Jan was interested in the words about valuable gift, but he immediately declined the offer because this is a thing that is absolutely useless to him. The Master is so mad from old age that he is ready to sell his only son for garbage. So, he decides to help him get his sight back. Tank handed his master a katana, which Jean immediately took. Immediately, he sent her to Pu Xiao's side. It hit him, cutting off half of his arm. The man screamed in hellish and unexpected pain. He fell powerlessly to the ground, causing all the seagulls to fly away. While he was dying of pain, Jean ordered Tang to take the severed arm and send it to the old man. Tank accepted the task with a rag in his hands. With it, he lifted the severed arm from the ground. Meanwhile, the old man thanked everyone for coming to the party and apologized for worrying about his son. But people knew that when the kidnappers received his gift, they would forget their name. As he grew older, he began to realize that these are all ordinary little things. And as a decent person from a decent family, you need to deal with this wisely. After all, you can solve everything in a peaceful way and not take up a gun. The man praised such a beautiful philosophy of life because, even so, it will be possible to track kidnappers by Jingo if they do not have the brains to hide it. The old man sipped his wine glass contentedly, proud of his position. But the butler was back again, and not empty-handed, reporting the terrible news. He didn't understand what had happened again. The butler informed them that they had received this from the kidnappers and it was better to come out so that he could tell them everything. But the head did not want to leave the event and ordered to say everything here. People assumed that the guys realized their situation and sent a gift to the master to smooth things over and apologize for what happened. But even though they sent it, they already belittled the honor and authority of the chapter, so no gift can change that. The old man had already decided to listen to what had happened. The butler reported that when he arrived at the meeting place, there was no one there except for the courier who was sent to deliver this box. The head ordered him to open the box and show the contents. He opened the box slowly and carefully. Inside was Pu Xiao's severed arm. People gasped in horror. The old man immediately recognized whose brush it was and realized that his boy was injured. The phone in his pocket vibrated. They were the kidnappers. Since he's too old to come, they're ready to check on him themselves. Around 12 o'clock, they will also bring Pu Xiao, so they will have time to say their goodbyes. Out of rage, the old man clutched the phone in his hands. It broke into pieces. He was ready to give them the most cordial welcome. The old man couldn't understand why he had the courage to harm his child in front of him. People were ready to help the head deal with the culprits because they went too far, mocking so much parental feelings. They were willing to let the stranger experience the Pu family's breath of death. The old man was determined to find out the identity of the kidnappers. Meanwhile, they arrived at a wine restaurant and the tank was sweeping up all the meat on the plate. The four of them were sitting at the table, and Ashwan and Uncle joined them. Mr. Long said that this time he was really scared, thinking that now he would lose his daughter. But he realized that the Pu family was just ordinary people, so there was no need to worry. So he offered them a drink. Chan reassured his uncle not to worry about anything. The guy drank a glass. The girls standing near their table wondered how Tank ate meat with such gusto that they were hungry too. The uncle praised friend Zhen's appetite. During the war, the tank was guarding the far borders, so they had a problem with the food supply. And because of this, all operations were limited in time. And in one of them, he and 1,000 of his people were surrounded. The enemy was pressing down with numbers which did not allow him to break through. Under such pressure, Tank and his men were forced to move away from the border, and they built a fortress out of wood and mud. To do something for the wounded, he gave away his own army rations, and he hadn't eaten a crumb in days. And at the same time, he continued to give commands to his allies to resist the enemies. When Zhan and his men broke the siege, there were no more than 20 men left in the tank's squad. They all died on the battlefield, and the tank itself was exhausted. He didn't even have the strength to move around on his own, and his comrades were helping him. But even so, he couldn't forgive himself that all of his brothers had died, dying in front of his eyes and hands. The impenetrable commander, who never gave up the slack, could not stand it. Tears flowed from his eyes for all the dead. He took the blame for those who didn't survive that war. Back in reality, Zhan watched as the tank couldn't stop eating meat and apologized for the awkward situation. Jan smacked him in the face, sending meat flying out of his mouth. He wondered how the man had managed to make as many as 20 servings. Grabbing him by the collar, he began to blame him for being lazy and that he was too relaxed to leave the army. The tank denied everything. Zhan ferociously prepared to resume training next week so that he wouldn't get too lazy at all. He had no intention of refusing and accepted Emperor Zhang's order. My uncle heard this appeal. He didn't understand why the tank called him emperor. The tank immediately began to make excuses and come up with nonsense, just not to give away the identity of its master. My uncle exhaled and explained that he had already thought of Emperor Zhan, the great god of war and commander-in-chief of the army. The next day, people came to see Mr. Huang, reporting the information they had gathered. Dai Qi and his brothers are also indirectly involved, so they can visit here. But he decided to clarify why they are doing this. But according to the information, their opponent is not some street hooligan. But since they have a couple of dozen people, they should cope. He couldn't miss this chance. If he fulfilled the Pu family's request, then his Huang family would become one of the top families of the second circle. They were still 5 minutes away from their scheduled meeting, but they hadn't even crossed the first checkpoint yet, so it looked like they'd either changed their plans or got scared. But Mr. Huang was sure that madmen like them couldn't be afraid since they had already kidnapped young Mr. Pu. His subjects proudly applauded his wisdom. The time is almost here, so when enemies appear, they immediately start planning, no matter how many of them there are. And we must not forget that they have a young master, so if possible, we must proceed cautiously. Jan's car was stuck in traffic at the time. Tank was annoyed. He was sure that this traffic jam was planned by these scum, even though they were overconfident. Jan guessed that the old man had planned something, but he was also a good guy, and he hated being late. So Jan ordered a helicopter from the nearest military wing to be called here. Tank regretted that he could not come to them on his horse. The case goes to Pu Xiaomu's office. The old man is sitting at his desk with his assistant standing nearby. He asked for news from Huang Fa Kai and about the meeting itself. The butler said that he had just been contacted, and so far everything is calm. The guy next to me scoffed that the guys were just scared and decided not to come. Meanwhile, Wen Shu and her friend were standing by the side of the road who were upset because of the traffic jams, even though she was really looking forward to this weekend and was preparing to go for a walk. After all, they had not seen each other for a long time. But once 4 roads are blocked, they have to stay there. She wondered what had happened, what they had done. Wen suggested that we go on foot and check out what had happened there so big. But then, someone called out Wenjue's name. It was Songjung, who had bandages wrapped around his head. He was surprised that the lady was also there. Sue was immediately alarmed, asking what had happened. He said that yesterday, while walking in the park, he met 2 men who were trying to rob the old man and detained them until the police arrived. But in fact, the truth was that he tried to get into the club and was not allowed in, so he started a brawl and got it from the security guards. The girl was at a loss why old people go out on the street at such a time and advised just to call the police and give evidence. He immediately asked Ms. Jia if he looked like the kind of person who would leave a pensioner in the lurch, but the girls confirmed in unison that he looked like a liar. The man was upset, realizing that he was found out. Zhu took her friend's hand and prepared to leave, because they had to catch up before the shops closed. But he stopped them, saying that in addition to the roads, the city center around the Poo office was also closed, and shops are not working today. The girl was perplexed as shops cannot work on the weekend. Something big was going on there, but it wasn't a big secret that he could find out with just a phone call. After the call, he confirmed his words that there were no problems, only the closure of part of the city. But some of the shops are still working, and he can get the girls through Huan Fa Kai's guys. He will be happy to help them, and in 30 minutes, they will be at the music square. Since their car was stuck in traffic, he would take them in his car, which was only on the other side of the street, a 5-minute walk away. Her friend thought while Wenzui looked back. To her surprise, she noticed a familiar figure. It was the same Zhan Tian standing by his car with the tank. When he heard her voice, he turned around. The girl happily ran up to him, hugging him tightly. She said that she had been looking for him for a very long time and even asked her sister to introduce them. But she hadn't expected to see him so soon, for chance had given her another chance to meet him. Her friend wondered who this person was, and Wen Jue immediately ran to hug him. He put his arm around her, welcoming her back. She asked him what he had been doing for the past few years. John said that when the soldiers left, their squad received a special mission at the border and had to cut off communication with the outside world. She was angry that she tried to find out about it from her father, but he didn't say anything. Due to the fact that her actions could lead to consequences, she was sent to study and then work as a teacher. Su understood that Jian was going to solve all his problems with the Chen family. He promised that he would return, and if before she protected him, now he is ready to give her the most beautiful and happy life. Songjing, hearing his name, reacted sharply, knowing that this was the same brother eating. Chan ignored the man's question and continued to chat with Shui, asking for their plans for the music square. With a happy smile on her face, she replied that she could not always rest, but she did not expect to get caught in traffic jams and find out that the square was closed today. Songjing couldn't take it anymore. He exploded, starting to yell at the guy. Jan informed Yo that a helicopter would be coming for him soon and he could drop them off. The man was furious, and his girlfriend reacted immediately when he told her about the helicopter. She was surprised that it was only because of the traffic jam that he had called his private helicopter here. Jan confirmed her words, not understanding what the problem was. The girl didn't believe it, thinking that bragging was now in fashion to impress the girl. She started accusing him of lying because it even sounds ridiculous. The girl took Wenshue's hand, intending to lead her to Songjung's car. His words sounded more plausible. He started opening the car door for the girls, laughing at the guy, and that he doesn't use cheap show-offs, and even more so, he will not land the helicopter because of traffic jams. When she hesitated as she looked at Jan, taking his hand, she laughed at his joke and offered to go with them. Then they can chat. Songjung was displeased that even so, she was worried about this brat even though he wasn't a match for him. Jue tried to pull Jan along, but he didn't take a step. It turned out that his transport had finally arrived. At this moment, many helicopters appeared above them. The girl did not believe it, because this is the center. There are always helicopters flying here. Chan smiled silently. One of the helicopters started landing. It began to descend directly over Zhan's head. Songjing opened his mouth in shock. Finally, he sat down right next to them. The men who had announced his arrival came out, addressing him as General Jean. The girls were surprised that this transport came for him, and he did not lie. Songcheng is still in shock. Holding out his hand to Shui, he invites her on board. She was happy to show her friend that he wasn't lying at all, and invited her to come with him. The girl immediately became embarrassed. Songcheng couldn't even believe that it was just a rented helicopter. Meanwhile, Huang's gang saw helicopters flying by, which looked like the city was visited by the Zhan Emperor himself. But there was no reason for him to come to such a small place, since he has power over almost the entire country. The guy next to me said that it can only be cheap show-offs. Huan decided to take it as true and just forget it. But then, as he looked at the helicopters, he noticed something. When he saw the emblem on the flag, he was shocked. A flag with the emblem of the general of the winged cavalrymen stuck out of the helicopter. The boy realized that the god of war himself had arrived in the city. He immediately fell to his knees. The boy didn't understand why he was bowing. Huang immediately explained that it was indeed Emperor Zhan, and made his brother start bowing as well. All of his people fell to their knees as the helicopter passed over them. They flew by, and the gang started to get up from their knees. The guy informed Huang that the Emperor's helicopter was flying towards the Shanglong group. And what to do now? Huang made the decision to inform Master Pu immediately. Since the Emperor had decided to visit them, either they would receive a blessing or it would be their last day. You can't be frivolous by messing with such an overbearing person, or they will pay a heavy price. So, we need to inform Pu Xiaomu immediately that the winged cavalry general is on his way to the main office. Master Pu, at this time, was walking with his guards. It turned out that people, seeing the general's helicopter, began to gather at the office. But fortunately, they closed the roads. They were discussing what an honor it would be to meet the emperor. Huang ran towards Pu Xiaomu. He said he had urgent news. Master Pu didn't want to listen, thinking that the news about that kidnapper was his son, and decided to postpone the discussion. After all, the most important thing for him now is the one who flies in these helicopters with the red bird of the south on the flag. Because only thanks to him, the Pu family will be able to climb to the top, so the rescued son can wait. Huang whispered to Pu Xiaomu that it was a case about Emperor Zhang heading to Shanglong. Master Pu was shocked. He ordered me not to tell anyone about this. Stepping aside, meeting the emperor is not an easy achievement that all families gather for. Waiting for favor? But now the Pu family will receive favor from the Emperor of Heaven himself, and such an opportunity cannot be missed. The helicopter landed, leaving them, and flew on. Wen Shu asked Zhan if he would go with them, but Zhan refused because he still had things to do. He and Tank headed to the rendezvous point to deliver their son, Tank carrying Pu Xiao in a bag on his shoulder. Security stopped them, asking their identity and the purpose of the visit. Zhan told them to tell Pu Xiaomu that he was expected at the office with his son. The guards decided not to listen, and since they didn't have a Jingo pass, they wouldn't be allowed in. But the tank immediately threw Pu Xiao in a sack into the crowd of guards, demolishing them. They were lying around, and he admitted that this was the easiest way. Zhan ordered them to head inside. Tank picked up the bag and followed him. Master Pu and Huang were waiting at the helicopter landing site for Emperor Zhang's arrival. When he didn't wait, Pu Xiaomu became nervous, not knowing where the War Emperor was. Huang panicked. He was sure that he had seen the Emperor's helicopter landing in the music square, and he couldn't just disappear. A beat-up security guard came running to them, announcing an invasion of the office. Master Pu didn't care about any ragamuffins. He was interested in the Emperor's location, and he took the guard by the collar, but he said it was Pu Xiao's kidnappers who broke into the office. Huan realized that they hadn't informed security about the VIP guest, and therefore they reacted to any people as intruders. He kicked the guard out of the way and went to inform the others. Huang suggested that Master Pu stay here and meet the Emperor properly, while he went and dealt with the problem himself. Master was pleased with Huang's help for the Pu family, and will remember this act. Huang was gloating as he left, because according to Pu Xiaomu, he was one step closer to power in Haidong. A familiar car was parked in the parking lot. Master Pu recognized it. It was Liu Yongtong's car, but he didn't know the reason for his presence. At the same time, Yuntong got out of the car after learning that the Pu family would be visited by the Emperor. Master Pu scoffed at his reaction, considering that he had concealed the Emperor's visit until the end. Tank, beating up another security guard, was disappointed in the outstanding Chaebol Haidun, because their security system wanted to leave the best. Along the way, the tank scattered the crowd of guards continuing on its way. Jan asked him not to be so picky since they weren't soldiers from the war. Huang followed them, watching the dying guards as Zhan and the tank stood at the end of the corridor. He was shaking with fear, which even made him wet his pants. Zhan decided not to waste any time and moved on. He fell to his knees in relief, knowing that he had escaped death. They stood in front of the meeting room doors. The tank knocked the door off its feet, organizing the entrance. As they entered the office, Tank asked why Zhan had decided to let him go. Zhan laughed. even though the answer was obvious. The man wet himself like a small child, and if Tank wanted to get his hands dirty on him, he could have asked. After walking on, he ordered Tank to leave the bag on the table and call the old man, saying that he had 5 minutes to come and explain himself. Tank accepted the task and placed the bag on the table. He picked up the phone and dialed Master Pu. While Pu Xiaomu was chatting with Liu Yongtong, his phone rang. He picked up the phone, asking what had happened. Huan said that he thought everything was settled, but he had to leave because his guys seemed to have captured the kidnapper. Master Pu agreed and told him to deal with him and return immediately. After hearing the conversation, Yuntong noticed Master Pu's state of health and suggested that he settle important matters first, without worrying about his arrival. But Pu Xiaomu did not agree, because no important matters could distract him from meeting such an important guest, and therefore Xianglong, as the territory of the Pu family, must arrange a decent reception. Yuntong only thought that Master Pu didn't care about his family at all. Tank informed Zhang that he couldn't get through. Jan smiled, because he only wanted to give him a chance and he would have to visit him himself. But then he came up with an idea. After looking at the window, he thought of an alternative way to descend. At that moment, a body in a bag flew out of the window of a skyscraper. It immediately swooped down, falling directly onto a lively street full of people. People heard the crash, not understanding what had happened. They immediately began to whisper and look at what was happening, not fully understanding the circumstances. A huge crowd gathered around the corpse, surrounding the body. Jan ordered the tank to descend. They took pieces of glass and began to stand on them, as if on a skateboard. They jumped off and rolled across the windows. After returning from the war, the tank did not have so much fun as now. Master Pu made his way through the crowd, reaching his son's crumpled body. The old man slowly removed the bag with shaking hands. His son's corpse was lying on the ground, which he couldn't believe. A realization came to him. Picking him up, he apologized to him, because he would not be able to avenge him, definitely not today. He ordered everyone to find the culprit before the emperor arrived. Otherwise, the entire Pu family might suffer. Master Pu grimly ordered the corpse to be taken away from here, because the meeting of guests is more important than even the life of his own son. Two guys started dragging the body away in a sack. At this moment, Jean and Tank jump off the building, landing in front of the people. The tank immediately attacked the guys who were carrying the corpse away, kicking one into the distance. Giving one in the face with an elbow, he strangled the second, that he asked for mercy. He sent it flying to the ground, hitting it so hard that blood flew out of its mouth. John placed his foot on the corpse and asked if the old man was the Pu Xiaomu. Jan admitted that it would be very difficult to meet him. The old man couldn't understand what exactly was going on. The people watching around them started whispering, not understanding who they were or where they came from. John explained that even if the old man wanted to avenge his son, it would be impossible for him to do so, even though he didn't try to save him when given the opportunity. Pu Xiaomu was furious, and only hoped that this stranger wouldn't think of interfering with his meeting with the emperor. He only hoped that their guest's visit to Haidong would go smoothly, so he decided not to stand on ceremony and immediately asked how much money they needed. Jan scoffed at his selfishness, forgetting about his son's life for the sake of his own future, and I decided not to be trifling, naming the amount of 100 million. The old man was shocked. One of the surrounding people broke into the conversation. After all, he was the most powerful judge in Haidong. He ordered them to apologize to the old man and pay compensation, otherwise his sentence would not be lenient. Jan, hearing this, knew that they didn't want to solve this without a problem. But the old man asked them not to get excited. After hitting the intervening guy, he ordered him to get out of here, and no one gave him the right to speak. Master Pu handed Zhang the Shanglong Platinum card. Claiming to have 100 million on it, Jian took it. Satisfied with the deal, Zhan Tian prepared to leave. But he turned around, warning that if the card ran out of money, he would come back and find it. The old man began to speak out in the back, that after meeting with the emperor, he would find them and sort them out. Tank was surprised that for the sake of great power, he let the murder of his son pass by. John chuckled, because it was very similar to his own father. He only hoped that his father was still alive and waiting for Jean to come back so that he could break his kneecaps on his mother's grave, begging for forgiveness. Even the tank was startled by the emperor's aura. As they were leaving the building, they happened to meet Wen Xue and her friend. She was sure that he too had come to see the emperor. Jan thought they would be in the music square. Wen Xiang told her friend that she had heard about Emperor John's visit and had come here to at least see him. The queue in the building lasted indefinitely. The girl was upset because the Shanglong group lets people in if they have a wealth of at least 100 million. She also asked John where he came from, if they didn't see him on the way, which means he came out of Shanglong. He confirmed her words, adding that he had settled his affairs there. She was only surprised at his ability to lie and not blush. Songzheng came out of nowhere and couldn't stop slandering Jian for spending money on helicopter rentals to show off. Wenshu couldn't stand him anymore. In fact, Jian says whatever he thinks, and whether they believe it or not, he doesn't care. He was about to leave and handed Zhui a platinum card in case they suddenly wanted to go there. Song Jung was sure that Wen wouldn't accept this fake card because he would only embarrass himself by trying to use it. He decided to show off his connections by dialing Huang Fa Chai's own number. Tank was furious that some guy was trying to get on top of his boss, trying to embarrass him. But John stopped him and decided not to waste the Tank's strength on this disgraceful man and just leave. Huang picked up the phone and Jung started talking to him, wanting to ask for a request. But from the other side, a threat immediately arrived for excessive calls. Huang stood in the conference room, unsure if ordinary people were capable of doing this. There was a huge hole in the window in front of his face. Song Jung panicked at Huang's response. Wenshu is once again disappointed in him when he tries to rise in the eyes at the expense of others. She handed her friend a map just in case she wanted to go to Xianglong. Su herself decided to join Zhang. She put her arm around his arm and started telling him about the restaurant that was just a short distance away. Her friend only wondered why Wen Sui was so addicted to this Zhang. This card was useless anyway. Thinking about it, she decided to follow them as well. Song Jang could no longer contain the resentment that had accumulated towards this Gentian. At this time, the Emperor's elite security guards, they were sitting in an armored car, waiting for orders if something happened. And they received an alert that the Emperor was heading to a restaurant in Ziyang. On the walkie-talkie, he reports that there has been a route change. Meanwhile, at the Emperor's, they came to the restaurant on Sue's advice and the four of them sat around the table chatting. This restaurant was located in the most expensive hotel, and so everything here was very expensive. But Wenshu said not to worry, because they were celebrating the return of her best friend, so she would pay for everything. Tank in his repertoire ate all the meat from the table, taking conversations at the table, for disrespect to food. Everyone at the table was laughing at the military guy's simplicity. The girl wondered why John was not interested in meeting the Emperor, because there is no more respectful person, and he is the idol of all people. Jan made up his mind that the Emperor was not coming to Haidong. She didn't know how, but the whole town was waiting for him. But John insisted that if the Emperor really wanted to visit Haidong, the entire military would have surrounded the roads for at least 30 miles. So the maximum who can come is his close associates. Wenju admired his insight. She also didn't believe that the Emperor could come. The girl was upset. She so wanted to see him, at least with one eye. Since the Emperor isn't coming, whose visit is the Shanglong Company so preparing for? The girl asked. Meanwhile, in Shanglong Company, people began to doubt Master Pu's words about the general's visit. The guards called out to the old man, saying that they had lost track of the heavenly guards. He ordered them to return their trail immediately, or else he would become the laughingstock of all of Haidong for such deception. The guy didn't understand the order. How can he find the Emperor himself? The old man was at his limit, and he kicked the poor subordinate, demanded to find him, or he would risk his life. Master Pu thought of Huang as he was about to say everything. Slapping him in the face, he called him a useless trash who didn't know how to solve a single question. Master Pu wished he hadn't taken him as his assistant in the first place, pushing the man into a corner. The battered guy was desperate and all battered, but he couldn't cope with the man who and his accomplice were able to jump from the 26th floor. With the muzzle of the gun pointed at his forehead, the old man saw no reason to keep this idiot to himself. Huan begged for a chance to make things right and not take his life. Meanwhile, Song Jung washed down his grief with alcohol at home. Bottle after bottle sank into his stomach. He realized that it was because of Gentian that Wen Shui wasn't paying attention to him. Not that it was different before, but it was the end now. While he was feeling sad, the phone on his desk vibrated with an incoming call. When he picked up the phone, it was Huan who had mercilessly turned him down a couple of hours ago. However, Song Jung was convulsively happy about the call. He shrugged off the bad mood and went back to the case, asking about a guy in case he knew him. A picture of Zhan Tian appeared on the screen, which Song instantly recognized. He was gloatingly glad, because if Zhan had angered Huang, he would die, and Wen Sui would return to him. Meanwhile, the guys were still sitting in the hotel restaurant. Wenju stood up from her chair, happy about the opportunity to have a drink with an old friend after all these years. She asked why Zhan had so much free time, since he was either retired or on vacation. Right now, the situation at the border is under control, so Zhan's help is not required and he is free. The girl asked about his plans for the future. You cannot sit idle forever. Wenju justified the guy. He has been on the border for so many years and he should at least rest for a couple of days. He confirmed her words about a vacation that really didn't bother him, and at the same time to solve a couple of family issues. The girl sighed, because initially she wanted to help him with the work, but now she doubted it. A waiter suddenly walked up to the table, greeting Wen Sui. Their master paid the bill for her and asked her to give her his business card, inviting her to go up to a luxurious room on the second floor. It turned out that Zhu had been chased by a rich fan for a long time. Hinting to Zhang that he was much more influential than some, Jan didn't react to the insults, calmly eating the dishes. Wenju chuckled as she stood up. She handed the card back to the waiter. adding money to cover the bill, giving him a message not to make a fool of himself. The waiter was surprised at the girl's stupidity for refusing the Song family's own master, son K-Long. For such words, the tank immediately slapped the waiter in the face. My nose started to bleed. He immediately promised the tank death for such an act. The girl doubted her words. The Song family were military diplomats? Jan guessed that as long as you say no to them, they will hear yes. He spoke with a smile as he cut up the steak. This man has been following Wen Shui around for a long time, trying to make a pass at her, and she is very tired of it. The doors opened abruptly, revealing a huge crowd of silhouettes. A crowd of guys in suits filled the hall. Among them was a guy in a gold suit who was looking for the culprit for hitting the waiter's nose. He decided not to hesitate and point a finger at the culprit with wild resentment. Tank confirmed without emotion that he was the one who hit him. Wen Shu explained to K-Long that the Song family lived in Haidong, so she needed to respect the rules of other families. And for humiliating him, he was slapped in the face. Kailun started laughing at her, because she couldn't belittle him if they knew each other well. And it turned out that the person who invited him today wasn't him at all, but another guy, Chen Sihai. He greeted her, calling her his cousin's daughter-in-law. He offered her a drink with him, and then he would let her friend go. Their Chen and Wen families had already broken the marriage contract, so they could stop acting like this. The Chen family are the lords of Haidong, so it's better for her to accept his offer and have a drink. He started to reach for her with his hands, but before he could touch it, he was kicked in the face. The attacker was Zhan Tian, and Kailong was thrown off by the impact. Satisfied, Zhan assured that he wouldn't let anyone touch Wen Shui. He became so ill that foam came out of his mouth. Zhan's speed startled the boys. He was interested in the personality of this powerful guy because he doesn't know who he is at all. Jan didn't answer, only confidently stated that he was someone who shouldn't be provoked. These words made Shihai laugh wildly. He was sure that his Chen family could afford anything. Because of those words, he knew for sure that he wouldn't be able to let him out of the restaurant just like that. His men immediately began to rush towards Zhan. The situation was crazy. How could he beat up one guy with a whole crowd in such a high-end restaurant in the city center? It's against the law. The girl voiced it, hoping it would stop him. This made him laugh. He hadn't even started acting illegally yet. And since that's the case, Shihai decided to show what a true violation of the law is. Jian was already tired of hearing this. He ordered the tank to get their companions out of here so they wouldn't get hurt. The tank was ready to fulfill this request. He cautiously approached the girl, apologizing for the following. Abruptly, Tank grabbed their wrists. He chased them through the crowd, scattering them like midges to ensure their safety. Seeing them running away, the enemies ordered a chase after them. But Sihai had withdrawn the order to chase. There was no point in that. He was impressed by Zhan's bravery and heroism to be willing to sacrifice himself for the safety of the two girls. Jan laughed at the expression, "sacrifice yourself." He explained that he brought the girls out so that Sihai's blood wouldn't get on them. The blonde man was deeply offended by these words, and Zhan surprised him with his ability to wound with his tongue, even in such a situation. His men were ready to attack. One of them lashed out at Zhan, telling him to say goodbye to life, but his fist was only left with one finger, like a mockery. The guy was shocked how his blow was stopped with just a finger. They realized that his abilities were at the level of masters, and one of the guys took out a dagger from his pocket. As he ran in a crowd, he wanted to check which was harder, the dagger or his body. With one empty hand, he sliced through the blade of his knife. Zhan was proud of himself, which meant that his body was stronger than steel after all. One by one, Zhan killed everyone in his path. All of his men were lying down, unable to stand up, dying of pain. Unexpectedly for Shihai, only he remained. Zhan approached. Shihai was trying to protect himself with his family, and if he killed him, the Chen family would never let it go. No matter how strong he is, he's still vulnerable. So if he lets him go, no one will know about it. After slapping Shihai across the face, Zhan taunted Shangguan for being able to make children, but of dubious quality. He was surprised that Zhan knew his mother and was willing to bargain for his life, trying to give him what he wanted. Zhan instantly gagged him, kicking him away. Shihai rolled his back on the floor. Zhan was bursting with injustice and anger that their wealth was created from the blood of his family. And no matter how much you feed these creatures, they will never start doing good. Shihai only begged for mercy. Something from behind distracted Zhan. Suddenly, he dodged the bullet. It was Huang's shot that missed a little. Shihai saw his chance of escape, begging Huang to help him. Huang pointed the gun at Zhan, telling him to let go of his master or he would get shot in the head. He was only doing this for his own good, so that he could receive the blessing of the Chen family afterward. Jan just chuckled. And with one stomp, he ended Sihai's life. All that was left of the young master was a lifeless body. Kicking the body in Huang's direction, he pretended to comply with his request. This gave Huang the shock that Chen Shihai was dead. But then, he decided to give up on it, wanting to kill Zhan. Raising their hand, People in suits and guns began to run into the room, ready to destroy the guy. They surrounded John, confident of their victory thanks to their numbers. Juan gloated and laughed at his impending victory. John was only surprised by the number of firearms in one place, suggesting the opening of a new black market. With a wave of his hand, he allowed them to shoot with a smirk on his face. Juan was surprised but decided to do what he wanted, since he wanted to die so badly. Immediately, Juan ordered them to start shooting. All the agents pointed their guns at John. But then, silhouettes fly out of the shadows. The soldiers began to deal with the guys, using well-honed professional skills. In a couple of seconds, all the guys were lying on the ground in a layer, and the soldiers were standing in one line. Bowing down, they all apologized in unison for being late, asking for the emperor's forgiveness. Chan was gracious and decided to forgive them this time, making do with training hard for 10 days. The army once again thanked their emperor for his mercy. Huang couldn't understand why they were calling him the emperor, and it was all nonsense. He started yelling at John, calling him just a brat with a few tricks. While he was making his dissatisfaction, someone attacked him from the side. A girl with long hair grabbed him by the throat. With a single blow, it knocked him to the ground. It was a girl with long black hair and red eyes who was also wearing a soldier's uniform. Suddenly, she clung to Zhan's hand, coquettishly asking why the emperor left for Haidun without her. Zhan smiled, deciding not to tell this long story, and issued an order for her and her brothers to finish everything here and then check the local black market for a gun. Zhan decides to leave first. They bowed down and accepted the order. The tank with the girls went to Wen Shui's house. While the tank was eating furiously, Sui was very worried and decided to call her father. A friend decided to call her grandfather. Tank did not acknowledge their empty feelings, advising them to eat. But before Shu could dial the number, her phone rang and Zhan Tian's number appeared. She immediately picked up the phone and in a restless voice began to inquire about his affairs. He was already on the street and said that everything was fine. The girl was very worried that tears appeared in her eyes. She was so glad that he was okay and asked him to tell her what had happened there. Zhan decided not to share the details. It would be enough for her to know that everything went well. While he was talking to Shu, shouts were heard in the bushes. He immediately announced that he was hanging up, intending to check out what was going on there. As he moved deeper into the bushes, he saw someone. It turned out to be the man who attacked the poor girl and tried to do terrible things to her. Zhan came up behind him, interrupting him. He didn't expect to see this in broad daylight. Holding the girl's mouth, the man turned around in shock, not understanding who had approached him. The girl continued to beg for salvation. Zhan advised the man to urgently find a place to hide. The maniac couldn't understand what he was talking about. Chen repeated his words, trying to explain that he needed to find a hidden place where no one would ever find him. And maybe then he would save his life. For threatening, the man wanted to hit the impudent boy. Zhan was surprised by his courage, holding his fist with one hand without much effort. The man couldn't believe it. The guy was disappointed in the strength of the punch. Zhan made 2 movements with his hand, as if drawing a cross. With this, he made cuts on the man. The maniac flew off, and his limbs were bleeding. Chan was disappointed again. But then, the man spat something in the guy's direction. He was able to do it while flying backwards. Zhan dodged it easily. He flew into the water in a formation. While the man was drowning, he continued to threaten Zhan that the lay martial artists would find him and deal with him. These words interested Zhan, and he decided to stay behind, wanting to see something interesting. He began to untie the victim's hands, asking about her state of health. Tears flowed from her eyes, and she was immensely grateful for being saved. Zhen only assured her that she was safe now and asked if he needed to contact her family. She refused, asking to be escorted to the Shanglong group. This girl had caught Zhan's eye, and he knew that something interesting was waiting for him, especially from the Shanglong group. They reached Shanglong Company. Chan saw her off and was ready to leave, but she didn't let him go, and her father was the second founder of the Shanglong group, and for saving him, he would thank him handsomely. Zhan didn't know that the company had anyone else besides founder Pu Xiaomu. It turned out that there was a second owner, her father, Liu Yongtong. Meanwhile, her father was going crazy over his daughter's disappearance. Chastising his subjects for their helplessness, Pu Xiaomu tried to calm Yuntong down, assuring him that his daughter was in a safe place. These words hinted at Pu Xiaomu's suspicion of complicity. He just smiled, saying that he was a law-abiding citizen. If he wanted to kidnap a person, he wouldn't be able to do it himself. Yuntin ordered him to stop talking like he wasn't involved and tell him what he wanted. But if anything happened to his daughter Qingqing, he wouldn't just let it go. Pu Xiaomu decided to leave the dialogue and first introduce his friend, Master Lei Hu of the Lei martial arts clan, who has excellent martial arts skills. Returning to the topic of his demands, he demanded all the shares and Yuntin's place in the company. These words made the man lose his temper. Pu Xiaomu recalled how Yuntong himself rejoiced at the loss of the old man when he lost his son. Yuntin decided to agree, but first to hear his daughter's voice for proof. Master Pu accepted his request and ordered Lei to fulfill it. He started making phone calls, but all he heard was the sound of his phone being disconnected, and he didn't know what the idiot was thinking. Master Pu turned around, giving him a murderous look, but Lei only tried to reassure him that he could rely on his strength and abilities. The office doors swung open. Ching Ching entered the room with a shout. Lei was in shock, not understanding how this could have happened. Master Pu also couldn't understand her presence. She ran in and hugged her father tightly. He couldn't believe it. Yunton was glad to have his daughter back, glad that she was fine. She said that Mr. John saved her by thanking him for it. A proud John entered the office, greeting Master Pu once again, who can't stand him anymore. He wanted to meet him again anyway, so there was no point in putting it off. Master Pu was surprised that John was still alive and clearly realized that Huang was a waste of money. Yongtong personally thanked John for saving his daughter and promised that the Liu family would thank him properly. He noticed that this guy was also feuding with Old Man Pu. Yuntong turned to Master Pu, mocking him for being able to think things through. Hinting at his age, Pu Xiaomu only scoffed at the almost identical age of the Liu family head, reminding him that this wasn't the end of it as he addressed Master Lei. He confirmed the old man's words. Suddenly, he jumped back. Master Lei ran towards Qingying, intending to attack. Pu Xiaomu was ready to end their confrontation, planning to win here and now, but Jian covered the girl with his body. He extended his fist in response to Master Lei's fist. Jian's punch sent Lei flying. However, Jian managed to praise Lei for his great inner strength, which was already quite good. Master Lei was able to believe that the stranger had defeated his brother and asked where he was now. But Pu Xiaomu interrupted his question, suggesting that he should not waste time on such nonsense, just grab him and question him. Of course, he agreed with the master because that's what he wanted, and he hasn't used even half of his power yet. John was surprised that people judged strength based on their appearance, even though their own strength was no higher than that of an ordinary soldier. At these words, Master Lei was shocked. Jian decided to teach him a lesson, since all he had was average basic skills. After saying that, he started running towards the enemy. Master Lei was sure that the guy was being reckless and would definitely lose. They clashed fists. Only now, after being hit by Jian, Master Lei once again flew away. It slammed into the cabinet, getting stuck in the glass. Blood poured out of his mouth, wondering if this was the peak of inner strength. Zhang was very sad that all of his opponents were limiting their abilities to just the peak of inner strength. Pu Xiaomu was dumbfounded by what was happening, not knowing how he was doing it. Chan stood in front of an old man who was shaking with fear. After slapping him across the face, John was sure that Pu Xiaomu would want to talk again after his loss. Falling to the floor, Pu Xiaomu couldn't figure out what else he needed. After all, he had already killed his son. Pinning him to the ground with his foot, he asked for a simple thing to give up all his rights to the company, and then he could continue his lineage in the future. Master Pu doubted that John would kill him anyway, even afterward. He ordered not to waste time answering the question of whether he agreed or not. With the boot pressed down on his face, Master Pu had no choice but to agree. Yunton was amazed that this kid had obtained all the rights to the company so easily. After receiving the transfer agreement for the rights and shares, John finally found the perfect gift for Auntie when he returned home. The old man asked if he could leave already. Jian lets him go, as promised, but a little later, until the Liu family gives the same permission. Yongtong slyly hugged the old man, assuring him that the Liu family was serious and business-minded, and there was nothing to worry about. Pu Xiaomu didn't try to argue, and at that moment, Yuntong ordered his assistant to give the police all the dirt that he had collected on Master Pu over the years. Pu Xiaomu fell to his knees, knowing that this was the end, and he had nothing left. Some time passed, and it was getting late. The police were saying goodbye to Zhang, thanking him for his help. Master Lei and Pu Xiaomu were sitting in the car in handcuffs. Zhang was presented with an award for a good citizen, an ordinary badge. Qingqing hugged his hand, thanking him once again for everything he had done for his family today. Liu Yongtong officially thanked Zhan on behalf of the entire Liu family, and if he needed anything, he could always reach out to him. Zhan remembered this with a smile. It was time to leave, and he said goodbye to his new allies. Finally, he returned to Uncle Long's house. The family sat at the table, Tank eating again, swearing that he had delivered the girls safely. Jan chuckled as he asked why they didn't leave him for dinner. The tank boasted that it was left and fed as much as twice Jan. Tian slapped the back of the tank's head, marveling at its ability to eat anything in impossible quantities. The uncle justified Tank's desire for a delicious meal, and since this is the only thing he is good at, the uncle promised not to leave anyone hungry. Jen really noticed his uncle's skill, but he decided to ask how things were going with Tianxin Restaurant. He had already chosen the opening location, but in fact, he was a little worried about Aiden. After all, after opening it, he will not be able to fully take care of it. Jan assured him that he could open a business in peace and that he could take Yideng to live with him, fulfilling the duty of an older brother. They continued to sit at the cozy family table, sharing a laugh. After a while, Jean went outside. He praised the guys for protecting Eden and wanted to give them a reward. In fact, they were slightly careless and didn't even hope for any reward. But Jean had his own rules. Failure was a punishment, victory was a reward. As a reward, he offered to send them to Western Xizang, where they could test their strength. The guy liked the idea because if they could get to Xizang and stay there, there would be many doors and opportunities open for them in the future. But one of the guys thought about it. West Xizang is the winged cavalry region and no one has ever been able to interfere there. They were upset, but John ordered that his words were Xizang's. From these words, the guys were shocked and guessed. They immediately fell to their knees before the Heavenly King, promising to serve to the death. Jan turned around and started to leave, warning him not to mention this to anyone. The boys bowed their heads and would never disobey an order. When the emperor left, the boy offered to deal with one small problem before they left for Xizang. The action moves to a city school. In the staff room, Wen Shui hands Ashwang a birthday invitation for her and her brother to come. Ashwan promised with a smile that they would be there on time. Songjung, the physical education teacher, was looking after the girl, and he knew that Huang couldn't be trusted, so he decided to do everything himself. Since he can't marry Wen Shui, he's going to take revenge on Zhang with the help of his sister. Behind them was Zhao, the school's rebel, filming everything on video. He wanted to remind her what she was supposed to do, but they were interrupted by Kum and Daiki, who came up grimly from behind with a menacing look, taking the girl by the scruff of the neck. They were both scared, and Songjung tried to get away with it, but they wouldn't listen. In order to protect the Heavenly King, they started beating them up. The girl was hit on the back. After that, they lay on the ground beaten up. The guys were proud of themselves because, after this, they wouldn't even think of harming the Heavenly King. At this time, in the Song family, standing in front of the bed was a worried mother who couldn't understand who had dared to harm her child, Kaylin. The man suggested that she calm down, and that he had received news about the Ziyun district showdown, and that it was probably because of them that he was hurt. The mother was shocked that the security guards did not fulfill their main role, not ensuring the safety of people. But for this, the man hit her in the face because the second party in this showdown were people from the Pu family, and their head is already in prison. So he offers to find out if this child is involved. She was horrified. This was his son, and he didn't want to defend his honor like a father. Song Mingming decided not to talk to her because she couldn't think straight right now. There was news outside the door that a young man had come here to meet the young master, and according to him, it was because of him that the master had suffered. My mother immediately went out the door. She immediately slapped the subject for inaction and talking to the culprit when you could have just broken all his bones. The man lowered his head and accepted her words. Meanwhile, outside Sue's house, John was standing. All around him were his men. He was angry that the Su family wasn't going to let him in on their own. You'll have to find the entrance yourself. Memories washed over him. The whole family sat in a dark corner, shaking with fear, and dark shapes began to jump in through the windows, smashing them through. One by one, the glass shattered and more muddy people came in. They found them. My mother screamed as people began to approach. Remembering all this, it's hard for Shang not to kill them all. Song Mingming suddenly felt something. He smelled a very strong energy and a powerful thirst for blood. The gate was knocked out, and one of the guards was flying from the impact. Jan dealt with everyone while standing at the entrance of the Su family's house. Sun Mingming called Chiang Kai-shek, telling him about the unknown guy that, judging from his aura, he wasn't just here to talk. Chiang Mai will be here soon. As he walked on, Jean mocked the family's impotence. A crowd of guards stood in front of him. An old man and a large man passed through them. The old man only promised him a worse life afterward. For such deeds, the man, flexing his fists, suggested that Zhang come up with a suicide speech. Standing with one foot on the corpse, Jean was surprised by their hospitality and ordered their master to be summoned here. The man did not hesitate and was going to attack the impudent man, saying his name so that he would remember the name of his killer. Only it didn't hit because Jean dodged it. With the back of his hand, he slapped the guard across the face so hard that he bled instantly. He tried to stop the guy anyway, but he didn't feel as confident. John hit him again, mocking his status as head of security. An old man was running at him from behind, trying to teach the impudent boy a lesson. With one blow, he took it down, knocking out all the remaining teeth, not even knowing who the old man was. With tears in his eyes, he introduced himself as the Song family's butler. But he was hit on the other cheek and fell. Both of them, beaten, knelt in front of Zhang, apologizing for their mistake. Glancing at the remaining security crowd, he startled them greatly. They all immediately scattered. Jen ordered the man to be obedient while answering his questions. He had no choice but to agree. He asked the first question, who are the current owners of the Song family? And when I didn't get an answer, the second one asked me if for 10 years this house has been visited by masters who are proficient in edged weapons or hand-to-hand combat with fast and precise movements. Other than the master, the only masters were them. The Song family temple isn't big, so they haven't even seen such masters. Jen believed that they weren't lying, which meant that the Song family wasn't involved in the incident. Since that was the case, his business with the Song family was over. But at that moment, someone tried to stab Jan. He smiled. With just 2 fingers, he stopped the blade. Turning around, it was a girl, and Jean was upset that she had attacked from behind. Chen released the blade. It immediately flew off, which startled the woman. She pointed at him, remembering what he'd said about his complicity in injuring Kaylin. Shan made no secret of this and confirmed it. The woman began to approach, threatening Zhang to make his life in the city a nightmare. He glared at her. Immediately, the security chief slaps her in the face. He ordered her to shut up if she wanted to survive. The woman fell. She was furious that he dared to hit her, and promised to skin him and his family. The old man and the man started beating her for all her sins. Jan thought that since his wife and son were so stupid, there was no reason for the Song family to exist. There was a car on the road. John was surprised. It turned out to be the car of the head of the family that was leaving home. Without even meeting the enemy, he ran away, leaving his family to their fate. Song Mingming was leaving as soon as possible, not understanding why such a person would come to his home. Suddenly, Jean was on top of the car. He jumped down on the hood of the car, stopping it from moving. Jan smiled and greeted the head of the family through the windshield, not knowing who he was trying to run away from. The man immediately came out with his hands up. He immediately suggested that he tell him everything as it is, and not pull. And he did not understand who this guy was, because you can't hide from him. A military car drove up to them. After seeing her, Song Mingming was sure that this was his salvation. Running up to her, he began to introduce himself to the military attaché, demanding help. Jan just stared at it from the side of the car. Taking him by the scruff of the neck, he assured him that there were no people in the world who could help him. Suddenly, the phone in my pocket rang. He picked up the phone and greeted his little sister. After listening to her words, he said that he would come soon. People in military uniforms got out of the military vehicle. Chiang Mai asked about the incident because he arrived after the first call. Song Mingming started tugging at it because it was delayed and was almost killed by a very strong and powerful person. Chiang Kai-shek flexed his muscles, preparing to kill the daredevil who had attacked the military attaché himself. Mingming nervously confirmed his words, telling him what the brat had done by entering his house and killing his guards, and pointing at him. But Chiang Kai-shek didn't know who they were talking about, because there was no one there. When I turned around, the car was empty. He was in shock, not understanding where he could have disappeared to. Business moves to the central square. Shuang and Zhang were walking in the square, and she was holding his hand, complaining that he was late. Zhan began to make excuses that he was just finishing a couple of things and met with old acquaintances, promising that he would no longer be late. Shuang abruptly led her brother to a store. She said that today was teacher Wenxue's birthday, so she needed to buy a nice dress for the event, and Zhang could use some new clothes. Once inside, they began to choose. Jan noticed that someone was watching them from around the corner. It was a store employee who was staring at Zhan, surprised by his presence. He went to the manager's office. After running to the boss, he was about to break an urgent news. He said that he once worked at the Tiandu Hotel, and there was a guy who single-handedly beat up the security guards and bodyguards of the Chen family. And now he is in their store. The boss hesitated. The employee was confident and offered to notify the Chen family. He agreed to notify the family, but before that you need to show your interest and participation. A satisfied Shuang ran to pay with a bunch of packages, and an equally happy Zhan followed behind. The employee directed them to the room to pay for goods. They walked to the corner, and Shuang began to suspect something because usually the cash register is located at the exit of the store. But he came up with an excuse that this cash register is only for VIP customers, and the total amount of their payment is 10 million. Shuang realized that everything was not clean. Things here cost less than 10,000, and she asked what was going on. Jan knew that there would always be people willing to harm him. The employee began to pretend to be an honest employee, which is only reinsured so that they do not steal things for such a large amount. Shuang resolutely gave up her things and took her brother's hand as she prepared to leave. But behind them, the boss was already standing with his guards because the clothes were already packed and the metal tags were removed. He won't let them get away, leaving him in the red. Shuang knew that they couldn't oblige them to buy things if they didn't want to. He only laughed at her naivete because their store has its own rules, but offered them an alternative solution to the problem. For his dirty words, Zhan immediately slapped him in the face. He was furious, ready to kill the old man. The boss is shocked by the blow. They owe him 10 million, so they still managed to beat him. Zhan approached, forcing him to finish his words in his direction. The boss began threatening his brother that he could send the young man to prison for the rest of his life. But he saw how poor they were, so he suggested a different solution to the situation if they went with him to the Chen family's house. Ashwan turned to Zhang. He grinned when he heard about the Chen family. A second later, Jian charged at them. In a single wave, it knocked the guards and the boss off their feet, blood pouring out of their mouths. As he threw out another guard, he insisted that this fat man was only from a third-rate family and couldn't possibly have such a connection with the Chen family. So he should not get involved in someone else's war without realizing the consequences. The guy landed next to the boss. The fat man, who was shaking with fear, said that he had already called the police, and all the actions of the guy already drawn the highest degree of punishment. Chan smiled, saying that there are only a few people in the world who have the right to judge him, and it's hard to call them people. The boss plucked up his courage, thinking that the police would take him and his sister away, and they would get what they deserved. Jan was impressed by his bravery and confidence, so he was even willing to play along and wait for the police. A girl in a police uniform entered the store. It was one of Jean's undercover men. The boss was glad that the police had already arrived. The girl immediately asked who called the police. He ran up to the employees, claiming that he was a friend of their boss, and ordered them to take these two men who broke into his store, killed people, and robbed him of 10 million. The girl decided not to jump to conclusions, noticing the presence of surveillance cameras, and decided to start with them. The boss completely forgot about the cameras and tried to stop them with a phone call, because he initially told them that he knew Mr. Liu. He made a call to Mr. Liu Ju, telling him about his problem, and was told to hand over the phone. The fat man aggressively handed the girl the phone, telling her that their boss was sitting on the other side of the phone, and he was ready to tell her how to do his job. Turning to Zhang, the boss was sure that victory was already in his hands, and suggested that he kneel down and then he would make it easier for him. Jan chuckled at the familiar words. The girl turns on the bell on the speaker. She asked Mr. Liu Ju a question so that he would say whatever he wanted. At first, the phone was silent. Then came the satisfied voice of the supervisor, who recognized the voice of employee Fu Xiang, not understanding what she was doing there. In any case, he didn't want to tell her anything, only asked her to visit him and tell him about his training in West Zhejiang. The girl was talking to her boss with a smile, looking slyly at her boss. She decided to ask if Mr. Liu knew the owner of the Lion chain of stores. The boss was shocked by what was happening. Mr. Liu just laughed, because he had such friends every second, and you should not believe them. The man was nervous, not understanding how. She threw the phone to the man because Mr. Liu had hung up and jokingly suggested that he dial it again. He picked up the phone nervously. Dropping to his knees, he asked in a shaky voice who she was, but she decided not to answer. The facts were more important than that, and it would be better if he confessed himself. He immediately confessed to the lie without fully understanding the situation. So he took employees away from important matters and is ready to take responsibility for it. Jan walked up to him, smiling as he asked what exactly he should be jailed for. But the boss again began to make excuses because they didn't even pay, so they are not their clients. Then they have no proof of all this. But at that moment, he received a notification on his phone about the transfer of 10 million to his account. The boss was shocked by this. Realizing that this was a setup, Jan laughed that his hand twitched unintentionally and asked him not to forget to return the money to him when he went to prison. He suggested that he become a good person in the future because he doesn't really get to play Underworld. When it came out, Fu Xiang was already standing with handcuffs in her hands, accusing the store boss of buying and selling contraband, extortion, and threatening her life. And now he has to go with them. Employees took the owner of the store. Fu Xiang thought that everything seemed to be finished, but something was incomplete. So she decided to interview everyone individually to get a complete picture of what had happened. Jan agreed without any problems. Ashwang watched suspiciously as the employee led Zhan to another room. Once in the private office, Fu Xiang suddenly clung to Zhan's arm, wanting to receive a reward from the emperor for her good work. He thanked her, but couldn't understand why she was a police captain now. In order to fulfill the task that the Heavenly King had given her, she had asked the club for help and was given a senior officer's position and access to the database. The senior officer from the club is named Uchitori, and it was he who gave her this opportunity. Zhan wondered why Captain Uchitori sounded so familiar to him. She remembered that he had learned of the emperor's arrival in Haidong and wanted to give him a gift, and also asked to pass the suit in her hands. Zhan will remember the gesture. Fu Song handed Zhang the flash drive with the necessary information and suggested that the imperial court's forces be mobilized for a full check. He said that as the king issued an order for inspection, hundreds of deaths were caused by the Shangguan family and company. But they were only midges, and the most important people hid deeper. But he wasn't going to let go of the people who had participated in the division of his family's property and had driven his mother to her death. Fu Xiang bowed down to the King of Heaven for his power and promised to do her best. They walked out of the office and met Ashwan standing there. She immediately started asking them about the events in the room and why it took so long. Fu Shang grinned, mocking the little lady's fantasy. At these words, Ashwan immediately blushed. The girl turned around and left while Ashwan was angry at Fu Xiang. She got ready to leave and said goodbye to the guys. Jan and Ashwang also came out of the store with bags. But before leaving, the girl turned around and stuck out her tongue. In the evening, the Metropolitan Hotel celebrated Wen Xue's birthday, and various people came to the event. Mr. Wen thanked everyone present for attending his daughter's birthday party and wished them a good night's rest. People were having fun, drinking and socializing. John and Ashwang came to the celebration, admiring the surroundings. The girl was dressed in a beautiful blue, long dress. Her eyes sparkled with beauty, because this was her first such event. Jan walked up to Wen Xue, wishing her a happy birthday with a glass of wine in his hand. Wen Xue was glad that they were able to attend today. The girls behind them were discussing the unknown guy that Xue was so happy to see. They started discussing him. Judging from his appearance, he was from a rich family. One of them knew his identity, and that he was recently discharged from the army. And now Xue is crazy about him. The girls disapproved of her choice because he turned out to be an ordinary poor man. So in the future, she will regret it. Another of the girls knew that choosing the military wasn't worth it, and any of her suitors would be better. Her friends agreed with her. An armored car pulled up to the Metro Hotel. The guy greeted Brother Long, not expecting him to come back from the army with such a busy schedule. He got out of the car, not having the right to miss Wen Xue's birthday. The guy started walking Brother Long to the event, telling him that the banquet was divided into 2 floors, where the second floor was occupied by gentlemen and the first floor was full of young people. But with his status, he has the right to sit on the second floor. He was sure that Wen Xue was on the first floor right now and wanted to personally congratulate her. As soon as he stepped into the building, he was dumbfounded with anger. He was angry that some unknown guy was standing so close to Wen Xue. Brother Long watched Xue dance beside Zhang. Through the people, he began to approach them to sort them out. Everyone noticed that Wu Chia Long, Wu Chia Gai's younger brother, showed up at the event, one of Wen Xue's most ardent fans, and they were thrilled to see the showdown. They started exchanging rumors that he once beat up a certain Zhu fan out of jealousy. When the Chen and Wen families entered into the marriage contract, he had let it go. But since the marriage was annulled, he definitely wouldn't miss the opportunity. Walking up to them, he greeted Xue, trying to take her with him to say something. Wen Xu was dissatisfied with his request and overall presence, so she demanded to say everything here. Brother Long immediately ordered Zhang and Ashwang to leave them alone. Wen Xu interrupted his request because she trusts Zhang and wants her to stay. Wu Qialong looked menacingly at the guy, asking if she was talking about him. Zhang confirmed and asked what he wanted. It turned out that Brother Long had heard about Zhang and knew how good he was at martial arts and how even the Chen family's masters were powerless in front of him. But I decided to give him advice that it was better to lose a girl than a life, hinting at him to give up without a fight. He started to pull his hands towards Wen Xue, forcing her to go with him because he urgently needed to say something. Standing in front of the girl, Jean defended her, because she had already rejected his offer, so he had better leave. Brother Long was stunned by Jean's order, driving him away. He swung, trying to get at Wen Xue. The boys clashed fists. Only Jean's punch sent Long flying. Even after receiving such a blow, he was overconfident, once again asking if he wanted to fight him. Jan didn't hesitate for a second. Seeing no obstacles to fight, he began to threaten his identity because he entered the special draft at the age of 10 and became a lieutenant at the age of 17. The guy claimed to have fired more shots than they could ever see, and how he participated in real combat operations in the most extreme conditions. With an epic exit, Long once again clarified whether he wants a fight. That made Jean laugh out loud. He apologized for such a reaction because this is the first time he comes across such a biography before a fight. He would have been happy to read his resume too, but unfortunately he left it at home. Wen Xu giggled at Jan's words. Such jokes made the veins on Long's forehead pop out. The girls around them were worried about the guy who was provoking Qilong into a fight. They laughed at him for daring to give Long a murderous look. She knew that Jan was so arrogant almost always. Long once again threw his fists at the standing Jan, intending to send him to the hospital bed. Jan didn't move an inch, wondering at his ignorance. Just as the fist came close to his face, someone stopped their fight. It was Mr. Wen who didn't want to see a fight at his dear daughter's party and suggested that they just have a peaceful conversation. Long immediately accepted his uncle's words and decided to do so because he respects him very much. Mr. Wen was proud of Junior Long's discipline. Chan was surprised by the speed of the face change, and if the tank had such an ability, he would have received his tablet belt long ago. Mr. Wen recognized Jian Tian, and even though it had been 3 years since he saved him, the guy in front of him looked a lot scarier. Next to Mr. Wen was also Mr. Song, who was surprised by Zhang's presence at the event. The guy immediately recognized the man who had abandoned his wife and children to their fate. Ming started to cover his mouth, thinking that the law could do anything. The girls who liked to gossip were surprised that the guy managed to provoke the Song family as well. When Shu's friend remembered that Song Kailong had chased them recently, Ming started complaining to Chia Long that John came to his house in his absence and beat up his wife and son, like a soldier. He can't let go of such a vicious person. Even though he had promised Uncle Wen not to pick a fight at the event, he had no choice. He suggested that Zhang kneel in front of brother Song, and then their row would be settled. Wen Shu was sure that Long was taking on too much in front of so many people, but he assured Xue that the Song and Wu Chia families had been linked by strong ties for many years, and his brother would have done the same. Ming confirmed his words because if Zhan didn't run away so fast, Wu Chia's brother would have dealt with him. Long ordered Zhang to make a choice. Zhan grinned, asking what the negative answer would be as he poured the wine on the floor. The spilled wine spilled onto Long's shoes. The boy's patience began to run out from this act. Mr. Wen ordered Long to stop talking nonsense because it was his daughter's birthday. He apologized to the master, explaining that he didn't want to spoil his daughter's celebration in any way. But if he gave in now, his family's face would be tarnished in front of the audience. Mr. Wen pondered over his words. Chan took off his jacket, tired of listening to his empty speeches, and doesn't want to spend the whole evening on such trifles. One girl signaled them to start fighting because she was tired of waiting. Her friend tried to stop her. People expected that at the end of the evening, someone will remain disabled. The girl turned to him, not understanding who he was and from what family. He wasn't part of an influential family, after all. He had achieved everything on his own and had become the head of the Tiandu Hotel's Human Resources Department. The girl was angry that some ordinary office worker was even allowed to attend such an event, kicking him with their shoes. The girl was embarrassed by the behavior of her friend. Ashwan tried to talk her brother out of it. Wen Shu also asked not to take this person seriously, but he immediately assured them that after tonight he would never disturb them again. Jan is confident that Long will respect him like a god. The people around him knew that the guy was just teasing Long, knowing in advance that he would lose. Mr. Wen gave orders to call Wu Chia-gai, Long's brother, to come here as soon as possible. Long took a fighting stance, admiring Zhan's courage, but it would be an honor for him to fall at the hands of the ancient martial art of Wu Chia. People didn't expect to be able to see Gu Wu's martial art. Ming knew that the Gu Wu technique allowed for the formation and control of internal force flows, which was equally important in martial arts. Jan drew him in with his fingers, imploring him to attack first. Long rushed towards Zhang, intending to destroy him with his powerful fists. The guy easily dodged the blow. Long tried to kick him from behind, but Zhan dodged just as deftly. He voiced his thoughts about the technique that was actually called 8 Heavenly Hands. Because there, it's not about the technique, but about who uses it. After landing, Long was annoyed that Zhan was only dodging and not fighting like a man. He tried to cut him off, but the guy jumped over his attack again. Chan taunted his punch, saying that in the original Gu Wu technique, it could cut through water, but in his performance, he would at least create a small wave. His practice leaves much to be desired. Long was furious that the guy could only talk. He beckoned the soldier with his finger again to show more of his skill. Ming looked at the fight and realized that Wu Chia Long was far inferior to his brother, so it was better for him to leave before the fight was over. At the same time, Wu Chia-gai enters the hotel building. He was angry that his brother only knew how to make trouble for him, and his patience wasn't made of iron. As he passed on, he met Ming running away. He was immediately glad that guy had arrived, because the same guy who had run away was inside now, and he could deal with him. This amused the boy, and he was ready to disturb Master Wen's event.